Yes, hi everybody, here we are again, a new season, 2005. The first big Pro Tour race of the year is Paris-Nice, a race of more than 1,200 kilometres over 7 stages and a prologue. All beginning with a prologue just on the outskirts of the capital of France, Paris, at Issy-les-Moulineaux. Alongside me, Paul Sherwin, a man who has ridden Paris-Nice, and it is always a hard race, Paul.
It certainly is. Its nickname is the Race to the Sun. It starts just outside of Paris, as you say, in the Hauts-de-Seine, or the town of Issy-les-Moulineaux, which just happens to be the home of the race organisers of this event and, of course, the Tour de France. Then right down through the middle of the country towards the finish down in the Provence area and the very famous finish in Nice.
And who more fitting to begin the programme here than Jörg Jatzke, last year's dominant winner. New team for him this year, Liberty Seguros. And we'll like to see what sort of form he is in at this stage of the year. This is a 4-kilometre lap around the streets of Paris, and a high spot of only about 150 metres above sea level, in this case the River Seine.
Very difficult one to judge, though, because that first 1.7 kilometres takes the riders up to the high spot. If you go out too quickly, well, then you really don't have enough left for the end. The fastest rider so far started off very early on. Viktor Gusev, the Russian rider from CSC. He recorded a time of 5 minutes and 18 seconds, ahead of Alberto Contador, who rode very well early on in this year in a race called the Tour Down Under in Australia.
Well, looking now at the prologue, this is Jens Voigt, and we expect something big from Jens. This man is such an aggressive bike rider. He's one of the secret weapons, I think, of Bjarne Riis's CSC squad. Just look at the effort on his face here, and it's going to be a great time. Gusev's time is going to fall at last here. Crowd enjoying the moment here. Wintry sun, but nonetheless it is shining. It's not warm. As Jens Voigt makes a big effort, he might even see the clock. He will now. He gets best time, 5:15.41. I don't think anybody will be surprised with that performance.
He's beating his own teammate, and it'll be interesting to see how some of these other riders perform. Floyd Landis, it's the first time I've seen him in Team Phonak colours this year. He's renowned as a very good individual time trialist. He's the leader now of Team Phonak. But I think maybe this time trial here over just 4 kilometres might be a bit short for him in the early part of the season anyway.
Well, a lovely crowd here, and Cofidis, of course, a French team, and they're going to cheer their riders all the way home. The Parisienne, you see, does come out and enjoy sport, even though it is a bustling city normally. This is a nice way to see the city of Paris shut down for a bike race. Chavanel, good time for him, good start. 3rd place overall, and I suspect a big hope for the time we get down to Nice. Well, there he is, Paul. Nobody knows how fit he is, what his form is like, but at least he's back in the big time. Lance Armstrong.
Wearing number 51. A little bit worried, I think, about the shortness and severity of this time trial this year. It'll be interesting to see whether or not he is on form. We'll get a first indication of how Armstrong is once he rolls out of the starting gate. I don't think he'll really be going for this, Phil, because as you can see, he's got leg warmers and arm warmers on to try and fight off what is a very cold springtime day here just outside the centre of Paris.
Well, he's wearing that famous number 51, but I have to say I'm not sure whether the legs are up to it. Here comes Fabian Cancellara, a much better prospect for a big start to the occasion. As he races up to the line, this is the man that got the better of Armstrong in the Tour de France prologue last year, but this time hasn't got the better of Jens Voigt, 5:17.8. Back with Lance.
The position looks good. The high cadence that we've come to know over the last few years is also very good, but intermediary times are not looking all that good for Armstrong. We're coming down to the tricky parties are coming away from the top of the climb. Quite precarious on the descent as we look down here on Jörg Jatzke, who is not also doing some of the great times. In fact, he was a very fast man in the prologue last year. It's a tricky course this to judge. As I said, it's 1.7 kilometres up to the top of the climb. We go back to Armstrong, and Phil, look at this. He's a long way off the mark. He's going to finish outside the top 50. Well, in fact, now it's 60 and still counting.
Well, it's going to be a first victory for Jens Voigt here in the prologue. Lance Armstrong, and look at the position. 125 and counting, 135th as he crosses the line. Lance Armstrong being given the privilege there of also wearing the first Pro Tour leader's jersey, simply because he is the man that the UCI chose to pull it on. As we now see Eric Decker also running Voigt close, a 5:18, 3rd place for Eric.
Decker always good in the early part of the season, the national champion of Holland, and this is the only man who could possibly beat Jens Voigt, Jörg Jatzke, and he too has gone outside the time of Jens Voigt's time to beat 5 minutes 15, and Jörg Jak's already gone outside that time. That's a bit of a surprise, Phil. 20th place for the man who won this event last year, and he shakes his head there just a little bit, I think, in disgust.
Well, you probably know what Bjorn Ries will say to him, but there's the result for you. Jens Voigt getting the victory with a 5:15 ride, 2 seconds better than Cancellara and Eric Decker, and Gusov, who was an early leader, hanging on to finish in 4th place. But what about Lance Armstrong? He's definitely here for the training miles now after an opening like that. I don't think we would expect such a poor ride from Lance, but we have it. Michael Rogers, World Time Trial Champion, just about getting his name in the frame. But there it is, Jens Voigt, who is now 33 years of age, getting what is not his first win of the season, because he won a stage at the Étoile de Bessèges and 2 stages in the overall in the recent Tour of the Mediterranean. Let's see if we can hear what he's saying.
His split times, and when I heard that on top of the climb I was 8 seconds in advance, I thought, yep, that should be enough. That should be enough for a really good time. I lost a little bit in the descent because, you know, I'm not a crazy descender, but yeah, it was good enough to win. So yeah, I'm more than happy with that.
I bet he is. So Jens Voigt, he pulls on the first maillot jaune of Paris-Nice as he now begins his journey south to where they hope the sun will be shining, but it's not shining yet, Paul. In fact, it's jolly cold here.
Well, you can see, you can almost feel the coldness on this first stage on the open roads, Étampes de Chambry, around about 186 kilometers. And as we charge into town, you get a chance to see that everybody here is taking this race very seriously, stretched out into a very long line. If you want to win the stage here this afternoon, the place to be is right at the front end of this pack.
And not at the back here, as the riders just sort of hang on. Just 10 kilometers to go here. It hasn't been a terribly eventful day, although the pace had been pretty high. But now it looks as though it's building up for a big sprint finish here to the line. Fassa Bortolo getting a grip at the front of the race.
I'm not quite sure who they're actually trying to lead out here this afternoon, unless they maybe think Kim Kierken's got a chance of doing something rather special, or even trying to get their man Fabian Cancellara up there with the possibility of maybe getting himself some points. But just look there in the second line, you can see the Quick Step boys moving to the front. They're obviously thinking about their man Tom Boonen, who is in pretty good form so far this season.
You might be right about Kierken, because he's the third man down there. He's wearing a different coloured jersey because he's the champion of Luxembourg, so he's in the red, white and blue of national champion. This is the story at the rear end of the field here. Riders here just happy to finish at the moment. Last man is Jell Karlsson of Finland in the Leaky Gas team, sitting there just on the back with his arm and his leg warmers on today. But this pace now is fast here, and the wind pinning them over to the left of the road. Every man battling just to hold position. There's no chance of moving up a few positions at this stage of the race. You're either in the sprint or you're hanging on just to finish in the same time.
Tell you what, this speed is really quite remarkable. We're looking at around about 50 kilometers an hour, which is a very difficult average speed to push up in the early part of the season. These races are really violent for the body if you're not ready. And there's Karlsson at the back there, national champion of Finland, by the way.
Yep.
Just listen to the brakes
there. There's been a crash
there.
here, Paul. Oh, no, there hasn't.
I think it was. I could hear the whistling.
Yeah.
I could hear the whistling of the
somebody
brakes.
had gone down there.
But it was just coming into this corner, a very tricky run in towards the finish. Everybody nice and safely around that corner, but it is very much Fassa Bortolo in control.
Oh, that's an interesting sight, isn't it? Warning of things to come here. Pataki, their big sprinter, is not here. But it hasn't seemed to alter the practice, because Paris-Nice is all about getting fit for the season, as well as it being a very competitive race in itself. All the best bike riders in the world have triumphed in Paris-Nice. It's a very strange race. It is a very hard race. A lot of riders don't like coming to Paris-Nice at this time of the year. It's not the sort of race you can sit around and get some training miles in your legs. You've got to make a serious effort.
It's too violent if the body's not ready. You can see this is a great lead out here by Fassa Bortolo. There's Kim Kierken in around about 7th or 8th position. Not too far behind him, though. It's the big line out of Quick Step. And a little bit further back, everybody's just trying to hold on. It is a very tortuous run into the town of Chabris here as we move through one or two of these little towns in the outskirts. It's rather difficult with all these undulations and turning to the left and right to try and stay at the front end of the main field, but that is the safest place to be.
Karlsson's doing well just to hang on here, because he's not exactly closing the gap down, is he? But he's determined to stay where he is. These narrow roads are, and you see he's had to nip round the Cofidis ride, I think it was there, has opened the door. That's what makes it hard at the back. You've got to keep bridging the gaps to stay, and there really is a big crash this time, a massive pile-up. No idea why it happened just there. It's only a veer to the left, Riders in the ditch trying to get back in the action. Total queue behind. And as they get back on the bikes, they're moving off. Now, can we see anybody down there of importance? This is a really big melee. I don't think anybody is hurt. But what will happen here, Paul? This is what, about 7k to go. This will split the field. They won't get back
chaos.
now.
There will be times given at the end of the stage, but the men at the front are certainly in complete command there. Fassa Bortolo looking over. They won't know who's in the crash, but they will have heard it. As we look, there's Freddie Rodriguez at the back. Fast Freddie, he won't be up for the sprint here this afternoon. He's going to lose himself some time.
And this is Lance here, isn't it? This is Lance Armstrong also down here. Very rarely see him involved in a crash. Looking a little bit nonchalant about the whole thing and clearly losing more time after that late result in the prologue. Yes, look at this. There's no urgency about Lance whatsoever.
There's no panic stations at all there. Actually, just looking into the face there.
Seems okay, but he seems very disinterested. Now just look at the splits here now. Not caused by anything but that crash. And because we're at the top end of the red zone in the rides now, I don't think half of these riders will rejoin.
A lot of them won't rejoin. You can see the problem is Fassa have still turned up the screws at the front end of the main field. And when you can see an organised lead out like this, you've got to realise it's very unlikely that anyone else will be able to reintegrate inside of around about 6.5 kilometres to go. There's Kerken, fourth from the left in the jersey of the national championships of his country, Luxembourg. There's a couple of the CSC riders in there as well.
I'm just noticing on the right there, Paul, was the Quick Step team of Tom Bonan. So obviously Tom is in there because he's got teammates working up on the right flank as we look down here from the helicopter. And Bonan has had a couple of wins this year and had a wonderful season last year. A massive victory margin over many races. A total of 24 wins for Tom last year. And he's still only just over 24 years of age. An incredible talent.
Quite interesting there. In fact, the neutral service vehicle had pulled off to get in behind that group. So the race referees obviously believe that that leading group is not going to get caught. The gap up to around about 22nd. But there's a lot of stragglers behind. Very much split up. And I wonder if any of the big names have been really caught out in that accident, which wasn't dangerous. It was just that it blocked up the front end of the field and nobody could actually get by.
Rather novel there to see the two groups just passing through our camera, both being led by T-Mobile riders. The front one not realising his mate was chasing in the back one. Some are going to get back, but that gap has opened immensely now on this front group. I think that said 5 kilometres to go, that banner. And this group is well clear now and racing clear. This is poor old Freddie Rodriguez. A sad sight indeed. He looks as though he's a bit hurt here by that fall.
Just got to get himself to the finish. Inside of 10 kilometres to go. He's not really going to get eliminated on a day like this, but certainly he went down very hard, and that's not much fun at the start of the season.
No, that's very sad indeed. While Fred lumbers at the back of the race there, this is really the race for the sprinters at the front, and it's going to be an incredible chase this. One of the riders who has pulled out today, before that in fact, also involved in a crash, was Robbie Hunter, the Phonak sprinter. He's gone out of the race today. And amongst the riders not starting after the prologue, surprisingly, was Bradley Wiggins of the Crédit Agricole team.
You see the organisation here at the front end of the group, and it seems now as if very much Fassa Bortolo have lost control. Moving up there on the far side, I just caught a glimpse of Jens Voigt. So Jens Voigt, I wasn't quite sure of the jersey, but of course right. I'd forgotten he was in the yellow and white jersey of leadership. That's so right. Jens Voigt has made the gap here. There's Tom Boonen just going through. Kim Kerken looking very comfortable. And this looks like Big Axel Merckx, yeah.
It's a bit late to get dressed up for a bike race though, Axel, as he continues along, but he's in the right group here. This is the sort of day which we expected would be a bunch sprint and not cause any rocking of the overall classification, but it's not working out that way now.
That other CSC rider at the back there, number 43, if you caught a glimpse of him, he was the man who led the prologue yesterday for a very long time, Vladimir Gustev, and he's actually done well. This is Thomas Vukler, made famous last year by wearing the Tour de France yellow jersey for 10 days. Very popular in France and throughout the cycling world, I would say now.
That's indeed, and a new team for the boys from France this year, Bouygues Telecom, which is the National Telephone Association of France. They're now sponsoring in this sport, and it'd be a big thing for Tom. He'll never be the same guy again after that wonderful season he had last year, and I think he'd be a real threat this year. But of course, we all know him now, and the riders particularly will mark him.
It's a big gap, around about 25 seconds, and that's not the whole field, because you can see there are no team cars behind. The field still very much split up by that crash, which happened at around about 7 kilometers to go. There's Jens Voigt just over on the right-hand side. We're now going through 3 kilometers to go to the finish. And Jens Voigt, actually, I wouldn't discount him as getting a top place towards the end, because when he gets himself into a position like this, he's always got the very good chance of producing a fine sprint.
Also hearing that Cadel Evans, the Australian, is another rider involved in that shunt. Poor old Cadel, he does fall off a lot, but he's up and chasing and in that back group. Some big names losing time here that they may have a job recuperating on the way down to Nice. Not far from the finishing line now, and that group is not waiting for anybody.
There they are. It's still 20 seconds. I don't think there's going to be any integration, and you can see just how much chaos was caused there. There's the referee, but still no team cars getting themselves in. Very precarious now. Everybody's trying to ride fairly close up to the front end of this group. There's Merckx going through. Gusev's still riding at the back. There is the leader of the race in the yellow and white jersey of leadership of Paris-Nice, Jens Voigt. Once the Society Tour de France, or ASO, took over the organisation here, they wanted to give honour to what used to be a white leader's jersey here at Paris-Nice, so they kept the white jersey combination and slapped in a little bit of their own yellow from the Tour de France. Bobby Julick's in this group as well. Just caught a quick glimpse of Bobby, so he's riding well to stay up at the front end of the field. That is the chaos. Looking down there, you can see the field basically split up into 2 or 3 groups. At the front end there, you can see the wind obviously coming over from the left-hand side. There's a nice diagonal line. The place not to ride is over on the right-hand side there, because that's known as the door. And you're always fighting to get through the door to stay in the forward-moving front diagonal line if you can. The leading group still got the neutral service car behind them, the yellow neutral service car of Mavic, who look after nearly all of the major bike races in the world. And we're now looking and searching, I would say, in the front group for the Flamme Rouge, the red kite. There's a little move on the left-hand side that looks like Thomas Voeckler there trying to surprise everybody. A nice move by him, looks over his shoulder, he's got the gap.
Huge effort this. What a way to stamp your authority on the race very early on, but I don't think he'll get away with this one. As I said earlier, this man is now known to these riders, and he's not going to be allowed to slip away, not in the last kilometre. But it's a very, very good effort by the young Frenchman. Big year coming up for him this year.
Big year of confirmation. He got himself about 2 meters 50 off the front end of the main field, and he's quite seriously now been pulled back into the fold. You can see now a little bit of organisation. In fact, there's a few flakes coming across here, and I wonder if that's a little hint of snow in the air. It is very cold, just above freezing point. Many of the riders you can see wrapped up against the elements. But the chaos there, you know, Phil, there's not many men left in that front group. There's going to be a serious change tonight in the overall classification.
Well, there are 1 or 2 good sprinters still in this front group here, and they're all packing now for the final run to the line at 500 metres to go. Voeckler is back in his place there now. This has thinned out quite violently over the last 2 kilometres. It is now going to be a race for the sprinters here, and a little bit of a rush coming up on the outside, or on the right of us. I think it was Galzaz.
Someone's gone down. Someone went down very hard there. It was just halfway through. It was one of the riders slipping back, but it looks as if Tom Boonen's men have got control at the front.
I think it was a Fassa Bortolo rider who went down, but Boonen is now giving it his final kick here, and he starts off with a win. Tom Boonen gets his 3rd win of the year at the end of the day. Pagliarini, a man we know a lot from the Tour de l'Ancor, he missed that race this year to try and make an impression in Europe early on. He's got 2nd place, and I think 3rd went to Jan Kersipou, possibly the Cofidis rider Casper, who was also in this group. Now look at the time difference here. That's the winner's time on the top of the screen.
Looks like Jörg Jatz over there on the right-hand side as well, the Liberty Seguros rider, so I think he's missed out on the split here this afternoon. A lot of riders have lost serious time on the first day out on the open road. 43.5 kilometres an hour, that really hurts in the early part of the season.
Seconds lost, and that may be important as this race unwinds. The peloton segmented into 3 or 4 groups here. And don't forget that out there on the road somewhere is Lance Armstrong, and Freddy Rodriguez is last man on the road and currently some 7 minutes behind, and all he wants to do is get to the finish.
Look at the faces on these riders. There's Floyd Landis, another man to miss out as well, and he was looking to ride well here. Let's just, oh, that was right in the middle, and actually it was the Fassa Bortolo rider who went down.
Paolo Bassoni.
He'd actually done the lead out for his teammates, and he was just going back, and I think somebody just rear-ended him. Seems to be okay, but there was no discussion at all about Tom Boonen right down the right-hand side. Started the season off very well with a couple of wins in the Tour of Qatar, but this man is proving to be rather difficult to beat.
I tell you what, there's nobody going to get mixed up with big Tom Boonen here, because he is such a good sprinter and he's still so young. And there's the result confirmed. The Pagliarini it was, Kürtipuu, Caspers, Stefan de Jong rode well there to get the fifth. And what about Valverde? He was the sprinter there on the Elis Baleares team, and that is a little bit of a surprise.
Great ride there by Tom Boonen. You know, it's amazing to think that as a 21-year-old he finished third in Paris-Roubaix a couple of years ago when he was a member of the US Postal Service team, and since he switched across, he has a lot of good things to say.
Especially with the narrow roads and a lot of nervous guys and a lot of nervous teams. It wasn't so easy to stay in front, but today I saw again a very strong team, and we were able to control the race until Fassa pulled everything into pieces. And there was a big crash then, I heard, because I haven't stayed, and I didn't have the time to look back. And then in the final I had a good Kevin Ulsmans and a very good Trenti with me, and they sent me on 150 meters to go, and then that's where I started sprinting.
So Tom Boonen there doing that. There's the result. That's the overall situation now. Dekker the leader, and that's a good result. Same time as Jens Voigt, who finished in that front group, and Cancellara there just 2 seconds off the pace. But the grand old Dutchman, Eric Dekker, comes out to start another year on tremendous form. We think this might be his last year, but who knows, as we now move on to day 3 and stage 2. This will take the riders not so far as they anticipated, Paul, because of the snow. This is going to be only a 46-kilometre stage.
Well, the stage is shortened from Orga-Pers to Thiers, and the snow came down overnight, and this has been the case very often in Paris-Nice. Reminds me back to the Paris-Nice of 1980, which was won by Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle, where there was snow on almost every individual stage. Fortunately, the snow not coming down, but many of these riders feel seriously wrapped up against the weather elements.
A Christmas card setting, and as we're in the warmth and comfort of a commentary box, I must say it looks very nice out there, but I would imagine it is quite dangerous at the moment. Just above zero the temperatures, or 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and the police there warning the riders about something, and I think that's what it is. They couldn't get that big truck off the road, but the peloton. The thing is, Paul, when you get a stage reduced to just a few kilometres, they go in excess of 50 kilometres an hour, and it really hurts.
It really hurts. It's very violent, and especially with the temperatures being as they are down here, just tickling above freezing. There was Alexander Vinokourov in the group.
Looked like a lotto rider putting in a bit of an attack there. We'll see if we can pick him up.
Very much like the shape and form of a guy by the name of Nico Matin, but it's causing serious problems at the back of the group here, and that's amazing when you think the stage is just 46 kilometres in length. It is Nico Matin.
It is Nico Matin, and he's now just trying to stretch them. Well, it's a good tester, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere. As the field now reaction, yeah.
When a guy looks back like that, he knows he hasn't really got the gap. It's more of a tester than anything else. You can see Fassa Bortolo being very sensible at the front.
Well, he chose the right area. That looks like Matty Heyman there, the Australian from Rabobank, now slipping off the back after that big effort. In fact, all of the Rabobanks are paying the price here, and I think it's because they've been at the front, so be it, for about 45 minutes today of racing. But to try and control the race in favour of Eric Dekker.
Well, look at Jens Voigt here. This is Kim Kirken on the attack there. This is a little climb just on the outskirts of town. Kirken here is trying to get himself some points, but also try and steal an advantage, and matched very easily there by Jens Voigt. Voigt in the green and white jersey as leader of the points classification. And sliding down there on the left-hand side, you can see Tom Boonen not really having a very comfortable ride up this hill, but he needs to stay in contact if he wants to have a crack at the sprint again.
Well, there's the crowd, and what a brave few souls they are out there today on the edge of the autoroute. Kirken and Voigt trying to just top this very shallow hill. It's only third category. Keeps them warm at least. Voigt just goes for everything, never gives up. And remember, he's equal on time with Dekker, so if he finishes in front of Dekker today, all being well, he could be back in the leader's jersey.
There's the summit of the climb. Near the front you can see the pink jerseys of T-Mobile. That's Alexander Vinokurov, who's not too far away. But I think that attack there so late into the day has caught them just a fraction unawares. There's the yellow jersey, just flapping in the wind. That's the yellow jersey of Eric Decker here. Liberty Seguros coming to the front to try and whip it up. You've got to admire the style, though, there on the left-hand side of Jens Voigt. Never gives up. He's not got much of an advantage here, around about 100 metres over the front end of the main field. But, you know, Phil, he will never give up.
He's a wonderful bike rider, and he's got a strong adversary here in Kim Kerken. Kim winning nearly the first race of the year, the Trofeo Laiguilla, in February. So he is also finding the legs early on this year, riding on a strong team. With most of his teammates, the better known names of his team, they'll be riding Tirreno Adriatico, being Italian, of course. That's their big race. That is also a Pro Tour event this year.
Looks like David Rebellin on the front, whipping up the pacemaking. He's in pretty good form. Looking further back, you can see that even though this stage is only 46 kilometres in length, that's around about 28 miles, it's causing a few riders a little bit of bother. Dario Frigo at the back here, number 81, a former winner of Paris-Nice. Looking there, Phil, very much a shadow of his former self. In fact, he's going off the back.
Yes, he is. He's in that little group that's losing contact here as our cameras scurry up to the leaders. Again, this has been an incredibly short stage. It will be inside the hour, of course, for the 46 kilometres. And yet it's the speed that has hurt the riders. All those long winter miles they've been putting in, but no speed in the legs. And Jens Voigt doesn't seem to worry about this. Kim Kerken was 6th in the Olympic Games road race last year. We tend to forget that, although it was a group sprint more or less won by Paolo Bettini. In the end, little bit of help. It looks like it might be Valverde as he does come up.
He's being very attentive. It's one of his teammates, I think, who's come across here. But you can see they've, with that acceleration, brought Jens Voigt back into the fold. But the damage has been done by Jens Voigt and Kim Kerken. Looking over their shoulders now, they'll be not too happy, I don't think, to see that everybody is there in contact. They've lost one or two riders, but it's still rather a large group, and just looking at this scene makes me feel rather cold.
Well, at least the roads are wet, but they're okay. I mean, looking here, the early days of March the 8th to be exact, and well, it's just a little reminder that the winter doesn't go away in Europe until you get into the early weeks of April.
Jan Kirsipou there. Not looking very comfortable either, and he's got popped out of the back, so he's not going to be the sprint winner here this afternoon. It gives you an idea just how fast these guys are charging into town. We're right in the very heart of France, and it's not too far away from the Massif Central. Now look at that. That is important there, because Kim Kerken gets himself maximum points ahead of Jens Voigt in the King of the Mountains classification. But Voigt is looking for something else. Voigt is looking to try and get himself the lead back in Paris-Nice, which he lost yesterday to Eric Decker.
Interesting too that Valverde showed his legs there just to see what they were like on that climb. He's disappeared very quickly now. This is Sonia Duval out in front, got the gap. They're all getting the gaps, but nobody can push it home, because you're talking of riding right into the red zone here. Even on these little slopes, you've got to be around 46 kilometres an hour, which takes some requesting at this stage of the year.
That's why it's so difficult at the start of the season. You've got the enthusiasm to get off the front, but the body's saying, well, I'm not quite ready yet, I'm not quite tuned up, and this guy keeps looking over his shoulder to see what the reaction is from the main field. He hasn't got that much of a gap as he goes inside of 5 kilometres to go. It should take him around about 7.5 minutes to get to the finish line, and they're picking their way precariously into town here. Along a straight line, and you can see the movement at the front end as teams are starting to get themselves organised.
Well, Lance Armstrong's in there somewhere. We haven't seen too much of him. We did see him having some fun with some school children earlier on today, but that's all behind him now. Thankfully, no accidents in the bunch, so the whole field more or less together over this rerouted stage. Let's not forget, we're only racing some 46 kilometres because the road's impassable at the start today. So it was a good decision by the organisers. It's something they're quite used to with Paris-Nice. It's happened before, and I'm quite sure at this time of the year it will happen again. But now they've got round that Sonia Duval rider. I'm not sure who it is. This is looking far more interesting now, and Team CSC are trying to take command at the front.
It's like Sylvain Chavanel in second position as well there for Team Cofidis. A lot of hopes on his shoulders for France, hoping to become one of the great new French riders, along with Thomas Voeckler. France seems to have had a renaissance over the last couple of years with their riders Having had a few years in the doldrums, now starting to be just that little bit more aggressive on the international field. Chavanel switched across this year to become one of the top leaders of Team Cofidis. A lot of changes, many changes during the winter months this season because of the fact that teams needed to bolster their crews up to around about 25 men if they're to take part in the Pro Tour. This is Chavanel picking his way around, pretty precarious as he drops down into town now. It's a slightly downhill finish, and then all of a sudden it straightens up into the finishing line.
Chavanel won the Tour of Belgium and the Dunkirk 4-day last year. As well, he had a reasonably good ride too in the Tour de Poitou, which won 2 stages of that, but he's got to be very careful here. These roads are a little bit wet right now, and freezing surface. We're coming into the late afternoon after the travel to the start.
He's getting the gap.
He's hurting them too, because they're not getting up to him, even though they're right on his back wheel.
He's taking the risks. He's taking the risks around these corners, and he realizes now this is a do or die effort. He's got to give everything, because if he gets caught, he'll just get blown away by the sprinters. And it seems to be there's a slight easing there. It's a quick step rider on the front. I couldn't see exactly who it was. We're looking at 3 kilometers to go. Look at the way he put the pedals right at 2:45 there to make sure he was nice and aerodynamic going around this corner. Oops,
he's in
maybe
the slippery stuff there.
Just a little bit wide. He will have lost a fraction of his impetus there. It's a quick step on the front trying to pull this all back together for Tom Boonen. But you know what? Sylvain Chavanel here might have just created the surprise.
Well, good for him. He's not wasn't the best way to go around that corner, but he's opened his gap a little bit. He's now seen one rider try to pull off the front. Sorry about that when the picture comes to a stop. That's the camera automatically correcting itself when the signal is bad. But here we go around another sharp left-hander sticking his knee out. He's got around that one a bit better. He might well stay away here because of the tortuous approach in these conditions, or have I spoken too soon? I think I might have done.
Well, somebody's come straight across, and it looked as the picture froze again there. That's the link from the motorbike up to the satellite and down again. That was one of the riders from De Witteman Lotto who seemed to be coming across there.
It's just trying to get a good look at him there, but I haven't got him down yet. But there are 2 riders now clear.
It's Cadel Evans.
Is it Cadel Evans? Well, he's recovered from his crash yesterday if it is, and he's just the man to come alongside Chavanel. Perfect adversary, definitely needed at this stage of the race, because the sprinters are going to start building their confidence here. 2 men, though, upsetting their rhythm.
There's Alejandro Valverde on the left-hand side. It's still Quick-Step very much in control at the front end of the group as they charge down. And I have a feeling this might have split just a fraction. 1 kilometre to go.
Huge effort now, and Cadel is giving it a big turn at the front, and he's trying to get away because he's hurt Sylvain Chavanel, who still wants to kick on. 800 metres to go. The sprinters may be beaten here by an opportunist attack in the last 3 kilometres. I think Sylvain Chavanel is thinking he might have let the wheel go at the wrong time, because this could be a great result for De Witteman Lotto here, who've come together this year. And having said that, De Witteman, who used to help out the Quick-Step squad just behind, it looks like Quick-Step are closing it down.
Well, it looks as if they have closed it down. Moving up there is the yellow jersey of Eric Dekker, moving into 3rd place. He's trying to get to the wheel, I think, there of Tom Boonen. Kurt Adler-Arvidsson not too far away behind there either for Team CSC. Those 2 riders were blown away completely there. That's Boonen in 2nd position as they line up now for around about 400 metres to go.
Vincenti Reins is the rider now up there too for the ELS Baleares team. The sprinter started early on the right, but Tom Boonen again is going for 2 out of 2 if he can get it. This super sprinter from Belgium, there's nobody going to match that finish. He's a length clear of the field, off the bend, and takes it. So stages 1 and 2 have gone to Tom Boonen, the short and the long. And that about sums up that team, I think.
Tell you what, though, if you have a quick look at the bonuses out on the course, it may well be that there could be a change in their leadership as well. There's Boonen. He's a great sprinter, this guy. It's really unbelievable because he's still only 23 years of age. He's a young rider, but he rides, Phil, with the character of a man who's been a professional for 10 years. Just look at this. He saw the first move coming, took up responsibility and led from a long way out, and he was still accelerating away from everybody else over the last 30 or 40 metres. Behind, they were just hoping to hold on to his back wheel. Plenty of time.
Oh, a long way ahead. He judged that to absolute perfection. There was nobody in his league there. That's how a sprinter loves to win. That's how his teammate loves to celebrate. This is the face of young Tom. Look at the face of the other boys, just trying to finish not too far away from him.
There's Arvidsson over to the right-hand side, getting himself second. And look at that, in third place, Jaroslav Popovic.
Yeah, he was right in the picture there, but I wasn't sure I was seeing things. But there we are, Popovic getting the third place finish, Vincenti Renz, Elis Beliris getting the fourth place finish there. Presentation, deja vu of yesterday. 2 out of 2 road race stages for him. Christian Prudhomme, the new director of the Tour de France, last time we saw him, he was winning stages, I think it was, in the Tour de Picardy last year. Overall, he's got it. He's got enough in bonuses. 3 seconds, pushes Decker off the top. Arvidsson up into third.
Well, that's a great move by this guy. It's all the bonuses out on the course that have given him the lead the first 2 road stages. And let's not forget, he did a fairly reasonable prologue time trial as well to keep himself up at the top end of the standings. But Tom Boonen looking very comfortable as we head out now to stage number 3, day number 4 of the 2005 Paris-Nice.
And the snow still with us, but at least the stage is going to make the full distance. 118 kilometres today from Thiers to Craponne-sur-Azon, as the riders now move off in an orderly fashion here. Tom Boonen, the new man on the block. I can't see him winning Paris-Nice, Paul, because he is a strong man, but he's not going to get through the central area with the hills.
Well, like most big sprinters, Tom has got one little allergy, and it's an allergy to the mountains. And the last 3 days of Paris-Nice are very difficult, especially the day down towards the Montferrand. And then there's another day when they go right through all of the Arrière-Pays, the back country around the Provence, which is tough for a man not reputedly one of the best climbers in the world. And a man not enjoying his Paris-Nice either is this man here, Lance Armstrong. He's a long way down in the overall classification. I don't think, Phil, he's enjoyed these shortened stages because it's put a lot of pressure on him, and after all, this is his first race of the season.
Well, you remember back in his fight back from cancer, he came to this race and he lasted a couple of days and he went home, and there was grave doubt we would ever see him in a big competition again. He settled his mind, he picked up Chris Carmichael and Bob Roll, they went up the mountains training. Result, Lance came back, as we know.
This is David Moncoutier of Cofidis. He's looking to try and get himself a few points in the King of the Mountains classification. He's a man who in the past has been very successful, won a stage in the Tour de France. Here, he's thinking about taking the responsibilities of the French nation on his shoulders at Paris-Nice. Sitting up there, having got himself some points, this breakaway have got themselves a fairly decent advantage over the front end of the main field.
Yes, so the other rider up here with him in Liberty Seguros colours in that blue jersey is Darius Baranovsky, and the Sonia Duval rider is Inigo Cuesta. They seem to each have an interest in those King of the Mountain points. This is the breakaway. Also up here Stefan Gubert, and David Zabriskie is Team CSC, but the pack are not too far behind.
Nice arrowhead on the front end of that pack as they charge around the corners. And I think before they get down into the finish, they'll pull this 8-man leading group back into the fold. Looking now at speeds around about 48 kilometres an hour. And I tell you what, it has again been a very cold day in the saddle. 118 kilometres. Just looking over his shoulder there, Baranovsky realising that they're all back on his tail. That's Zabriskie in the middle there in the red and white jersey of Team CSC. And obviously not a surprise really to see Quick-Step taking the responsibility of keeping the pace high and trying to place their man. You can just see the yellow and white jersey of leadership bobbing in and out in around about 15th place, and that's Tom Boonen.
Well, they've got Michael Rogers, the world time trial champion, on the Quick-Step team, and they've got Rick Verbrugge, who's really the stage race man from Belgium. So they've got some good workhorses there to look after Tom. I can't think that Tom is planning on victory in Paris-Nice. There's a little bit of a move here, and Liberty Seguros is moving it away.
Well, that's Jörg Yats. This is a big move by them. There's 3 riders here from Liberty Seguros trying to get off the front. The third man there is Jörg Yats. This could be the big move because let's not forget, he's the defending champion from last year.
A team time trial formation. There's Yats, centre left now, and he's going to hurt them. He had a great result last year riding for Bjorn Riis's CSC team. Bjorn didn't want to let him go, but he simply couldn't match the offer made to him by the Spanish squad. And the Spanish squad has had a great start to the season. They rode exceptionally well in the Tour Down Under with Australian Alan Davis and also Alberto Contador, who's made a great recovery from quite a serious illness. But these 3 are about to deliver a lesson in team time trialling, I think.
I don't think it's going to work though, because you can see the main field is scrambling all over the road. It's hardly a tactic that's going to succeed when you see the big line of riders coming across there, but it certainly caught everybody fraction unawares there when you get 3 guys from the same team jumping off the front. And again, it's the Christmas postcard scene here in Paris-Nice. Looking back to see what sort of damage they can do. They've actually been rejoined.
The 2 guys here, Paul, with him is Alberto Contador and Luis Leon Sanchez. So he's got 2 good Spanish riders alongside him there. And you know, when you see 3 guys go in the same jersey, I think that alone is enough to create alarm bells in the peloton. And they've actually got a few up to them now, so that'll shut it down. Here comes the peloton, a little bit more laborious, but nonetheless getting back on terms. And Française des Jeux maybe going to pick this one up now.
Alexander Vinokourov, the man you just talked about, Luis Leon Sanchez, was the winner this year of the Tour Down Under, and set up very admirably by the man who was also with him, Contador. There it's all coming back together once again. I would think that this rather undulating run in towards the finish here on this stage of Paris-Nice is going to be rather difficult for one Tom Boonen in the group there. Alexander Vinokourov looking over his shoulder.
Oh, look at that.
When you see that, when you see the main field stringing and snaking across the road like that, you know that it's hurting.
Oh boy, it is a pretty scene. Even so, I agree with you, but that is a real snake now as it twists and turns its way towards the finish, all trying to hold the slipstream and stay out the wind, keep in the backdraft of the rider in front. So you go wherever the rider in front of you goes. It forms something of a whip, and these boys at the back are now rather stressed. Well, look at this now. Here we go again. Liberty Seguros are very anxious to leave an impression on this race. They've got good men on form, Contador particularly, and also Sanchez.
Well, that's Sanchez now. He was joined very quickly there by Cadel Evans, who also seems to be in pretty good form. This is Evans on the front here, digging deep. A man who, let's not forget, has worn the pink jersey of leadership in the Giro d'Italia, and I think quite happy with his change across to Team Lotto in the early part of this season.
Cadel just lacking a little bit of punch, but he's all right. It's on it now. Chance for this little group to move away, I think. They've chosen a nice area here, just slightly uphill. Well, the rider here on the front from Euskaltel, and I'm not sure who it is. It could be Lopez de Munien. He's really moved away.
He certainly has. He just rode Cadel Evans off his wheel there. Cadel Evans in that second group on the road with Sanchez Gil again. The main field still not very far behind. We're now looking for the next banner, which will indicate 5 kilometers to go to the finish. Euskaltel-Euskadi just holding on to the advantage. There's another move there just going down the right hand side of the road. Again, that looks very much like the shape of Sylvain Chavanel, the top Frenchman. And everybody just sitting up a fraction here. That's as if to say, well, just let me get a bit of breath back into the body before I go out again.
5 kilometers left to go. That's just 3 miles of racing here. Well, I'll say this, everybody is willing to have a go here. They've all got a little bit of faith in themselves. They feel as though they possibly can outride the field. Bit ambitious, I suspect, but if the pressure stays on... Oh, it's Martinez who's up here. We should have guessed that, I think. Those long, thin legs of Igor Martinez. Just trying to see who that is trying to reach him. It's Chavanel himself, the same as it was yesterday.
Chavanel trying to come across the gap, but you know, they've not really got that much of an advantage over the front end of the main field, maybe 10 seconds or so. Big organisation coming off, and again that counter-attack being covered by Liberty Seguros. We're inside of 5 kilometers to go, but it's going to take around about 8 or 9 minutes because it is still rather difficult on the charge into the finish.
I hope they've read their little race Bible, Paul, because the ride up towards the finishing line today is slightly uphill, and that could make it crucial as to match your move to the line. So the finish at Crapon may not suit Tom Boonen today, who's looking for his 3rd in a row.
Not really a Tom Boonen finish here this afternoon, but he's in great form in the early part of the season. Started racing in the Tour of Qatar, which was a great success for him. This is the difficult thing on the run in towards the finish. You know, once the move is gone, if you're not right on the wheel of the attacker, it's always very difficult to close down the gap. Just going back down the road there to see who's doing the majority of the pacemaking. Liberty Seguros are very attentive. There's no organisation coming from Quick-Step, so maybe the word has come down from Tom Boonen to say, well, it's not really my sort of finish today, guys, so let's wait and try and do battle a different day.
Tell you what, you've got to take your hat off to Martinez. He's actually really making them work to get across here, and in fact Chavanel behind is hardly getting any closer to him. They're just riding as 2 separate units here, and the field is just holding them in sight with a lot of firepower now to try and finish it off. That looks like the style of Jens Voigt again.
That is the style of Jens Voigt, the beast himself. He comes across the gap there and he's trying to nail it all back, and he's dragging 5 riders with him. This could be a nice split, because Voigt has certainly got great form at the start of this season, already with that win in the Tour of the Mediterranean just about 2 weeks ago. He's in fine form, and he'll be doing what he can for the rest of the team. He really is a great competitor, and his English accent has slightly hinted with a smacking of Australian.
Yeah. 168 started this race at the prologue. We've got 164 still in, so we haven't lost many. Mind you, there hasn't been a lot of reason to drop out just yet, although the pressure has been high on these flat stages. We're heading down just slightly off now to the southeast direction as we move away from the centre of France. The weather in a couple of days should be getting a little bit warmer as we go now 3 kilometres from the finish.
Well, this is known as the race to the sun, let's not forget that, and we're hoping that we'll get some as we get further down to the southern part of France. Another move coming across here. And
Chavanel flicking the right arm there, wants Martinez to come back. Martinez, though, has just done an horrendous turn at the front. I don't think he's got any more legs left to come back. They're catching the arrowhead, forming almost perfectly behind. 4 riders have merged, and we're just over 2 kilometres from the line here now.
Chavanel's just got himself onto the back there.
What's happened here?
Well, everyone's been told to get out of the way because the main field has come back.
Big acceleration from the gendarme there to get clear of the main pack. It's all over, though. They're going to come back together here.
Eric Decker again in the green and white jersey. He leads the points classification now, former leader of the event. In second place in the overall classification. He'll be looking to try and get himself a few bonus points if he can.
Well, that's the 2 kilometre to go panel there. They've just gone past. And it looks as though we've got Française des Jeux trying to open it up. Nobody wants to play into the hands of Tom Boonen. But if they haven't read the rules today, they're going to have a little nasty shock up to the finish. It does rise. It's starting to rise now, indeed, as we head towards 1 kilometre to go. And I'm just wondering if that is Vinokourov again trying to get in on the action.
He's been very aggressive, been looking for the move this afternoon to try and surprise everybody off the front end of the group if he can. I think this is Cancellara flicking his wrist there, looking over. No, it's Antonio Fletcher.
Yep.
Aggressive bike rider too from Fassa Bortolo, one of the top Spanish riders when it comes to one-day racing. And these 3 men at 1 kilometre to go may have created a surprise because there's a quick-step rider in there too.
Well, now is the big chance to launch the attack. These boys at 900 metres still have the edge here. Fletcher keep on saying, come on through and give me a hand. But they're playing right into the hands now of the 2 behind us. Fletcher hasn't got it the move. I don't think the quick-step rider is interested because it's not Tom Boonen. He wants the field to shut down, so this isn't going to work. Here they come now, and they're being led by a charging peloton in a very narrow street here, but they still got the rise to the finish. Now we're just starting to go up towards the line here. This is Fofanov, I think, of Cofidis, who's on the front. But now the line is stretching there because this little town is a bit nasty for the sprinters. It's going to be a desperate finish here now. Jens Voigt is leading them out, and he's taking with him there. I think that was Reigns of Elis Belarus who's coming through the middle. This will be a surprise if he holds them off, because that is Vincenti Reigns, but he's not going to do it. Yes, he is. Yes, he is, and that is an incredible win. He's only 23.
I don't know if you just saw Freddie Rodriguez wasn't too far away either, just over to the left-hand side. I think Rodriguez might have made himself a top 3 finish there, but the majority of the field crossing the line there, Phil, with the same time as the winner. But there is the winner, Vincenti Reigns. When I saw the Il Baleares jersey coming up through the middle, I actually thought it was Alejandro Valverde.
Absolutely. He's not a rider I think we've ever commentated on before, but let's look at it again. America, by the way, have got 2nd and 3rd here. Guido Trenti, the American who speaks no English, he's an Italian really, his parentage gives him an American license, has taken 2nd place, I think, just pipping there Freddie Rodriguez, the champion of the USA. But Vincenti Reigns at 23 years of age, that's only his 2nd win of his career, and that is a very special day for him.
Yeah, just have a look at this again. Jens Voigt led the race out from a long way, but it was Reigns coming right up through the middle with his raincoat flapping in the wind. That was certainly not very aerodynamic. And look at Freddie Rodriguez coming through there. But looking at the riders' faces, you get an idea of just how cold this stage has been this afternoon. It was rather complicated coming up through the middle there, and Vincenti Reigns did not panic at all. And just on the line there, he has time to throw his hands in the air. With the leader, Tom Boonen. Actually, Boonen, Phil, there did a fairly good ride. He gets himself into the top 10, but I think got caught out a little bit in the traffic there.
Well, great sprint. The boys found their sharpest legs here, and Elis Balearis have got a very well-earned stage win there. There's Fred banging his handlebars. He gets the third-place finish behind Trenti and Reigns the win. Arlen Kemps, another Australian, coming through now. Good fourth-place finish for him. Voigt getting fifth, and Fofanoff, who led them all out, slipped away slightly into sixth place there. There's a happy man. I wonder if he knows that not far away from his Bernard Hinault on the podium, just off our picture to the left. Let's have a look at the overall. Boonen then, it was a good result for him really, keeps his lead by 3 seconds over Decker. Reigns has come in now into third place, while Kurt Attel Arvidsson is up there in fourth. There's the happy smile from Tom Boonen. Life's going to get a little bit more ups and downs though as we move on, and I wonder if he'll still be in yellow by tomorrow night. So stage number 4 goes on, and it goes on without one Lance Armstrong, who has decided not to start, as we move on now to Thursday and we head down to Montélimar. 101 kilometres, Paul, and look at that, the snow's all gone.
Finally, that will be joy to all of the bike riders in Paris-Nice here, because I know what it's like. I remember that 1980 Paris-Nice. Everyone was thinking, when's the sun going to come? And it never came, and finally, only when we got down to Nice did the sun come out. But here, fortunately for these riders, on a reasonably short stage, the sun is out, and I think they're enjoying it for the first time this year.
Well, Lance Armstrong, he seems completely turned off by the weather. His heart wasn't in it from the prologue as we returned home. Floyd Landis, who rode alongside Lance, is his #1 lead-out man in the mountains last year, now on Phonak, and looking for his own form to lead his own team this year. Happy days, Floyd. This is where it all starts.
This is where it all starts. Not quite so much pressure on his shoulders here, but he will have a lot of pressure on his shoulders later on in the season when he has to assume the role as leader of Team Phonak at big races like the Tour de France. It's not quite the same pressure being a domestique as it is being the #1 top man.
Well, isn't it lovely to see the sun now? This is the nice part of Paris-Nice. As you race to the south, once we get down onto the coast, we'll see those lovely little yellow flowers called mimosa, and the riders start putting them under their saddles, because that's a sign you've reached the sun and spring is in the air.
Small group just off the front here. It's around about 8 riders in strength, getting themselves nice and organised. Looks again as if that might be Bobby Julich there from this altitude. Bobby Julich, a very attentive bike rider. If it's not Bobby Julich, then it's Jens Voigt, because those two guys are in very good form at the start of the season. I think you're safe with that guess,
Paul. Jens Voigt, you're always safe with him. He's always somewhere.
He's always near the front. But I think it actually, just looking from the helicopter shot there, I think it was actually Bobby Julich. Fabian Cancellara is in this group. Just a 12-second advantage over Tête de la Course, which is the front end of the main field. The yellow jersey, green jersey, and King of the Mountains all locked up in that peloton. It's actually a slightly bigger group than I thought here.
Looks about 9 riders have got themselves away here. See if we can pick them up now as they race up towards camera. 12 seconds is nothing, but you've got to start somewhere, that's for sure.
Jörg Jats has got into the group. There he is in the dark blue jersey of Liberty Seguros. Fassa Bortolo have done very well. They've got 2 riders present. Here is Jan Kirsipuu. And there's a good tip for the win. And in fact, they've just stretched out that advantage to 15. He's a great bike rider, Fletcher. Started off with the Banesto team, Il Balearis, and then finally switched across to this strong Fassa Bortolo squad. There's the front end of the main field. Now, I wonder who's going to chase here. It doesn't appear that Tom Boonen's men are on the front of the group.
They've got together in sort of 2 tranches here, but they've formed quite an interesting breakaway now. Julich is certainly there. We've seen Jörg Jatsk and Jan Kirsipuu. I think they were the later arrivals up there too. I think there's an Euskadel rider down there, and we'll check him out when we can. The peloton themselves, there's not a big reaction coming here, even though it's a nice day for bike racing today.
It's a nice day for bike racing, but there's a couple of teams missed out seriously. This is the front end of the group. Fletcher and Fabian Cancellara are looking rather dangerous in this group. That is Bobby Julich sitting on the back. Now, he's probably been given the word from Jens Voigt not to contribute to the pacemaking in this situation because it puts a lot of pressure on the team. Jens Voigt's third overall in a race that was won by coloured jersey on his shoulders. This time he's returned to the ONCE structure, which has now been renamed Liberty Seguros. That's Jörg Jats.
Now hearing that there are, it's Igor Camanho from Euskaltel and Nicolas Jalabert, who's the Phonak rider who's got up here. And the wildcard team, AG2R, have put a man in here, Nicolas Portal. So an interesting little breakaway this, but how nice to see Bobby Julich finding his legs here. He's in this move. He's well placed overall. Could be a big danger here. So might be a bit early to get too excited.
The back CSC have a presence in that leading group, and if you pull back there, you can see that gap is actually starting to increase. We've been given an official time gap of 20 seconds, but I can't see very much organisation on the front end of the main field. And that's actually not really all that big a main field either. One or two riders have been left behind.
Yeah, a lot of riders have split off here. There's quite a few riders who are lagging a long way behind, and they'll
danger in that leading group has got to be Jan Kirsipuu, though, because he is a very fast finisher when it comes down to the end, and he'll be happy with a small group. That's Kirsipuu there in second position. After a long career with one team, the AG2R team, this year he's decided to change and switch across to Crédit Agricole, and he seems to be very much more relaxed.
Well, I think there are 3 Fassa Bortolo riders here, and that's going to be a big help. He's looking down to see, I can see the 3rd Fassa Bortolo. So the other one is Paolo Bassoni. He was the rider who fell off the other day in that sprint finish when he was leading out the riders for the line. But he's in this group, and I think this is him working on the front.
And Kirsipuu coming through. Juan Antonio Fletcher in 3rd position now.
Amazing man is Jan Kirsipuu. He always goes to Australia to the Tour Down Under, and he goes there to find his form. He's never won a stage of that race, but as soon as he leaves Australia, comes into Europe, up he pops winning. Maybe this will be his day.
Could be the day for him. This is a nice situation as well, because none of these other riders in the group are really anywhere near as fast as Jan Kirsipuu. But he doesn't have anybody to lead him out. He's going to have to sort this sprint out on his own. Jörg Jats is not worried at all about the stage victory, I don't think, here, Phil. He's just trying to rip the race apart. That's him on the left-hand side, looking over his shoulder. You can see the guys from Fassa Bortolo are riding in a little bit of a panic too, because they're thinking about trying to get themselves into a race-leading situation. Bassoni, the shorter of those 3 riders, the big explosive man, spends most of his career looking after Alessandro Petacchi, who's not racing here, but racing on the other side of Europe in Tirreno Adriatico, and the gap is still increasing.
It's increasing, but it's going away ever so slowly. But one must ask the question, is the peloton at full stretch here? Because these boys are certainly believing in themselves right now. A Fassa Bortolo with 3 riders up here could be stitching up the team race today. They're well aware of that too. Now they've raced right down. They've gone past Montélimar, which is on their right shoulder. If we go further south, then we turn back up towards the finish.
2 kilometers to go. Another move here coming from Fassa. Very smartly matched there by Jan Kirsipuu. Kirsipuu must not let anybody get off the front here now if he wants to take this win. And this would be a good win for him and a good win to offer to Crédit Agricole. In fact, that attack there from Fassa has split the field. I think this is Fletcher on the front, followed by Kirsipuu. Looking over his shoulder, it's Cancellara who's also got there. There's a gap now back to the rest of the group.
Well, this is a perfect scenario here. They seem to have gone through the central reservation, made the corner okay. Fletcher is racing for the yellow and white jersey here of race leader. With a gap like that, he will get it for sure. I think he'd get it anyway, but the fact is he's getting a lead over that breakaway group, which is now not going to be caught, although the field is running at around about 28 seconds behind.
Not a bad guess there, but that's around about half a minute, and that is good for this group here. It's good for Jörg Jats and, of course, for Bobby Julich, who is in the group behind. But they are seeing here the stage victory disappear from them, because now they've got a gap over that group, and I'm not quite sure who's going to do the chasing. We've got Cancellara and Fletcher inside the last kilometre, and sandwiched right in the middle is Jan Kirsipuu.
This is a huge effort by Juan Antonio Fletcher. It's done for one reason only, to throw the stage away and get Cancellara into the leader's jersey. This should give Jan Kirsipuu the win he's been looking for. He just checked over his shoulder there to see where the rest of the race was. It's only seconds behind, but seconds could be enough, and now comes the move for the line. Fletcher has sat up virtually. He's riding in the slipstream. Now this is a perfect lead out now for Jan Kirsipuu. the ageing Estonian who has won a terrific number of races, about 120 I think in his career, but that's a big gap he's opened there. What was he doing, allowing a gap like that to open? He's recovered nicely, he's just hooked on.
Just come back up there, getting onto the wheel of the man in front of him there. You can see Jan Kirsipuu is in an ideal position now to take out this stage. He will just wait for the road to straighten up and then he will open up his gap. He's opened up the sprint now. He started sprinting right through the middle, but locked onto his wheel there is Cancellara.
Can you believe this? Cancellara challenging, I don't. Kirsipoo's winding it up now, and Kirsipuu is not going to have the legs. Cancellara gets his first win of the year, and the result will be a race lead. Now that is a big surprise. Fabian won 5 races last year, and I bet he never beat a big sprinter like Jan Kirsipuu.
What a funny feeling. Just a quick glimpse of the group coming across. I think it was Bobby Julich leading them home as well there for 4th place. But this is what's more important. There is a big gap and big domination there for Fassa Bortolo. I'm not surprised they're happy with that one.
Well, I think Jan Kirsipuu there is trying to get in and shake hands with the man who beat him. Yes, he is. A very generous loser, I think, because he should be kicking himself. But Fabian Cancellara is still only 24. And he seems to have been around for years. He was the man of the first day of the Tour de France in Liège, and now he's the man here now who will be next in line to lead the Paris-Nice. There's the main field come in, and I think they were led in by Tom Boonen. 32 seconds behind was the time gap, and that's certainly too much for Tom to stay up there amongst the leaders.
Kim Kierken there celebrating with Fabian Cancellara, who now will go back to the presentation position and not only take himself the victory, but get himself, I should think, the overall lead. That was the acceleration there. Jan Kirsipuu will be kicking himself, but he's a great bike rider, very good sportsman, and he was one of the first people there to actually turn around and congratulate Cancellara, who did a lot of work to make sure that that 3-man group stayed off the front.
I mean, he had it. It was just not in his legs. He'd done the sprint correctly. There was his line. If he'd been on his usual sprinting form, I don't think anybody would have got him, but Cancellara was not just racing for the win here, he was racing for the race lead, and quite literally every second counts, because tomorrow the race climbs up to the finish at Montfaron. Yeah, and that's a vicious climb high above the beautiful town of Toulon.
Got to say though, that was Jan Kirsipou's race to lose. He was the man who had the fastest finishing sprint. But I think the 2 riders from Fassa Bortolo outfoxed him and sandwiched him at the line, and Bobby Julich did hold on to get 4th place.
I'm surprised Kirsipuu was allowed the same time finish there as Cancellara. Fletcher at 2 seconds, Julich coming home with the rest. And that's a good result for Bobby Julich. He certainly seems to be refining himself on Team CSC. But there he is, Cancellara. He's used to waving at the crowds during events organised by the ASO, organiser of the Tour de France. And there's confirmation he is the new leader by a reasonable gap, still seconds though, but this race in the past has always been won by just seconds. Ask Sean Kelly, who triumphed 7 years in a row.
Well, Kelly was a great competitor, and he certainly was the dominator of Paris-Nice, and he would never give up until the very final day. I remember he didn't lead a couple of years ago onto the final stage, and he took it on the last day of racing. Stage 5, day 6. And it's into the Arrière-Pays, the area around Provence. And I can tell you one thing from experience, as we ride from Rognes to Toulon and the summit of Montfaron, 172 kilometres, there's no flat roads in this part of France.
No, and there's one heck of a climb up to the finish. And I think, but we don't never know, that the man that wins today could be the final winner of the Paris-Nice, because time will be gained on this long climb, and after that we're heading down towards the famous areas of Paris, of France rather, Cannes and Nice, all down on the coast. Here we are in the thick of it now. Number 45 here is Matty Hayman, the Aussie who's got himself into a nice little move.
Got himself into a nice little move with around about 20 kilometres to go, but these guys have never really got the big advantage over the front end of the main field. It certainly will be a showdown, I feel, on the slopes of the Montfaron. It nearly always is. And the man probably looking to try and get himself the win would be Alexander Vinokourov. In this group there, wearing number 73, Jalabert. Not Laurent Jalabert, but Nicolas Jalabert. He's a pretty aggressive bike rider on Team Phonak, and he always manages to get himself in small breaks like this. Gives Team Phonak an awful lot of publicity. And also in the group as well there from Saunier Duval is Nicolas Fritz, the French rider. The advantage these guys had was around about 4 minutes, and this is rather strange because we've slimmed it down to 1 minute and 50 seconds. That looked like Peter Sinkiewicz trying to come out of the group there.
a bit of a plan here. And now we're getting around the town of Toulon, and we're getting ready to start the final ascent. And this is where the rabbits try to escape, and they know they're going to have a hard time once they get up onto the mountain. It's Kevin de Wet, the Belgian rider, on quick step this, and a big effort by him as he joined the team this year. But these roads are beautiful round here. They're all narrow and twist and turn. Even when you're not racing, there's super roads to go out cycling on. But these boys know it is a hard climb today.
Well, they're nice roads for a meander on a bicycle, but at these speeds they are certainly not much fun. And they're also in the area behind the sea. The road is always covered here with a very hard surface, and it feels as if you've got the glue on the outside of your tyres. As you can see, De Wet here has actually got himself a pretty serious gap, but I can't believe that the main field Phil is not going to try and pull back that leading group of riders and have a showdown on Montferrand. 20 kilometres to go, but as you can see, for the moment there's hardly any reaction at all.
Well, that's a lovely sign on normal days, 20 kilometres from the finish, but I'm afraid it's largely uphill now to the line, so it's going to be a real tough battle.
It's Matty Hayman there on the left-hand side, the big rider from Team Rabobank in this leading group of 4 riders. Fritz on the front setting the tempo for Saunier Duval. That's where we are. We're on the small climb of the Côte de Sainte-Anne-d'Evenos. And unfortunately for the riders, that's the penultimate climb before the finish. It's the last climb of the day that's really going to hurt. Number 14 there from Gerolsteiner is Marco Serpellini. For many years, he was the youngest rider in the Tour de France. In the middle there, Jens Voigt, Sauvage Chavanel, and this is Jan Kirsipou at the back. Arrière de la course. That's not good for him, but you know what? He's never really been one for the climbs.
No, and he's obviously only just gone off the back, so he'll have to ride to the finish. Be a bit of a slog for him. He's got to keep up a reasonable speed, but I don't think he's going to be alone by the look of it now as we start to cut through the team cars, because there are a lot of riders here now. That's David Loosely of Switzerland, the Lamprey boy who's gone off the back.
Freddie Rodriguez going out of the back too there.
Dear.
It certainly is starting to get quite tough here, and that's all because of the pressure on the front end of the main field. A lot of riders losing contact. This is Aaron Kemps.
Yes, and he rode well yesterday. He's a good sprinter, but he's a young pro. He's having to learn the hard way like they all do. Jimmy Engouvant.
It's not a good place to stop.
No.
Didn't catch who that was from Domino Vacanzi pulling off at the side of the road, but that's a very dangerous manoeuvre.
It's almost as if he was looking to abandon the race there. This actually is hurting this little climb.
It's only a small climb. It's only a second category, and kind of forgotten about De Wert's off the front, and he's the man that's really put the pressure on the front end of the main field. It's like Van Someren coming up to the front here from Davide Monlotto. Over on the far side, Alexander Vinokourov, Phil, is never very far away, and let's not forget he's won this stage in the past, and I think that might well be Cadel Evans in second place, just sitting on his wheel.
It is, and there's obviously a plan afoot here, because they've asked Van Someren to set the pace, which is always interesting, because Cadel might want to be launched onto the climb of Montferrand. These are the original breakaways here. Nicolas Jalabert, nearest camera, 73. Matty Hayman, another Aussie. Boy, how the Aussies have penetrated all the big teams around the world these last few years. I think at the last count it was some 70 Australians are now on professional teams in Europe.
That's amazing. It really is quite a success story for Australian cycling. The big names are moving forward now. The light blue jersey you might have just caught a glimpse of was David Rebellin, second overall in Paris-Nice last year. He's a man who enjoys races like this, and of course he's going to very much enjoy the Montferrand. This man won't. Number 61, Tom Bonen, leader of the points classification. I think the discussion there is, well, let's just cruise to the top.
He's having a chat there with Kevin Holtzman, and I must say he's quite relaxed about it. There's no big ambitions today from Tom, I'm afraid. He's still in that points leader's jersey, though. As we see here, the rider from CSC is slipping away is David Zabriskie, a man from Utah in the United States.
Job done for the day there. He's been looking after the interests of not only Bobby Julich but Jens Voigt, the two warriors, I suppose I should say, of Team CSC, because they certainly are the two men for the start of the season. Jens Voigt has never lost any of his enthusiasm, but Bobby Julich a couple of years ago was talking about retirement, and it was only when Bjarne Riis came in through the winter season and said, well, why don't you come and join my team, that it seemed to be the start or the rejuvenation of Bobby Julich's career.
He says he feels great. This is Johan van Someren here. Well, that was the top of the climb there. Nicolas Fritsch The French guy on Sonia Duval was the first man over the top. They didn't contest it. They're more interested in staying away. Or having said that, we're beginning to see the chase now start to split up here. Bit of a serious effort now.
A lot of the big boys going out of the back. I just saw
It's
Stefan de Jong, the sprinter, disappearing off the back end of this group. And although it's not really a very long climb, it's certainly done some serious damage. Now, once they go over the top of this climb, unfortunately, they drop down and kick back up again for about 1.5 kilometers, and then they drop down into the outskirts of Toulon. And then it's the final climb of the day, and it's only about 4 kilometers long, the Montferrand, but I tell you what, it's a beast.
And this is the big difference now between the fit and the not so fit at this stage of the year. Early March, Jörg Yats just peeping through on the far left in the blue colours of Liberty Seguras, last year's defending champion.
Sitting actually on the wheel of Bobby Julich, his
Can't
former
blame him for
teammate.
that.
1:01, so it's still coming down. It was a maximum at one stage of 4 minutes, and at 1:01, I have a feeling these riders are probably going to get caught just before they get into the outskirts of Toulon.
Well, that would be absolutely typical of the peloton, timing the catch to perfection, and then a big showdown, purely one-on-one and strength. No tactics. It's a twisting, rather narrow climb, and it goes to nowhere anyway, and Johan van Summeren is trying to bring Cadel Evans to the base, and Cadel's stocking up with fuel down there, about 6 men back by the look of it. The rest content to follow.
This would be a good finish for Cadel Evans, because being a former mountain biker, he's got that explosive nature when he comes up.
Simone there, Paul. See him just tucking in on the right.
Yeah, actually, it's the first time I've seen him in Paris-Nice. I knew he was here. We saw him actually in the Tour Down Under in the early part of the season. The only time I saw him was in the finishing zone having a drink. He was hardly ever aggressive.
Off the top of my head, I think he finished 77th overall, but don't quote me. But he was very lowly down.
Well, he was in the bottom half of the field,
yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah. But there he is now, and looking perhaps to test his legs here on the climb, as often the case. Only 3 names now, so we've lost one, and the one we've lost will be Nicolas Jalabert. 3 riders. Oh, I beg your pardon. This is the result of the climb, which we saw. It wasn't contested, really.
We have lost a lot of riders from this group, though. This is a beautiful backdrop here this
Isn't it
afternoon.
lovely?
It's a great part of the world. Just if you've got reasonably good condition to go for a nice bike ride, because the climbs are not all that steep. And if you're riding up them at a nice 15 to 20 kilometers an hour, it's not so bad. But these guys are riding in excess of 30 kilometers an hour. There's 1 or 2 people at the early part of the season have got their bodies shouting out for mercy, I would say.
Still a nice compact little bunch down there. Back with the leaders. They are in fact still 4. And Frisch is the rider in the all-yellow strip. Nicolas Jalabert coming onto the back wheel now.
Serpellini in the pale blue.
Yeah, and Matty Heyman riding very well. Very good, because Matty isn't a climber. He's taken a chance today to try and steal a march and get clear of the field. They're still ahead, but it's probably inside a minute now. Just a little bit of respite before we start the climb up to the line. These roads always twisting and turning. I suppose that's in the favour of the escapees. Here's Kim Kirken on the front in his red top, Vinokourov in his mauve one. The boys from Sonia Duval just trying to ease it back a little bit, as is the rider there from Rabobank, to try and give their teammates a chance up front. Off to the left there, who else but Jens Voigt? He never gives up, just poking his nose in again.
Big, strong boy getting ready to try and do something. I think maybe the climb of Montferrand just a little bit too heavy for Jens Voigt. It's been a difficult stage today. I'm surprised to see these guys from Rabobank on the front. They may be trying to set a false tempo here just to try and delay the organisation on the front end of the main field and protect the interests of Matty Heyman in that leading group of 4 riders. But I think what this breakaway will have done today is put a lot of pressure on the main field, because they've had to keep chasing all of the time to make sure this breakaway doesn't get themselves a large advantage. And that's put a lot of riders under pressure in the early part of the season. 14.5 kilometers to go, and it's inside of the 1 minute mark now. So Phil, I hate to say, but I've got a funny feeling these guys are going to get caught within around about 4 or 5 kilometers to go. This is the small town of Le Brusson,
which is not too far away from Toulon. A nice little suburb to live in if you have to work in Toulon. Just noticed Vinokourov very active there. Well, he'll recall, I think it was 2002 when he won this very stage on his way to his first victory in Paris-Nice. He's won it again since then. So he knows the climb, he likes the climb, he knows if the legs are good, he can win on the climb. The gap has only come down to 55 seconds.
Well, I think the main field, just looking at the attitude of the riders at the front end of the group, I think they know they can pounce when they need to. There's a problem on the right. That looked like, I think that was Eric Decker had a problem there, very briefly assisted by his teammate.
Oh, our camera's going to go back. That was very nice of him. It is Eric Decker, but he's the champion of Holland, and he's got a wheel off his teammate and a quick push back into the action.
Well, he's going to have a hard chase to try and get himself back into the main field, and you see how quickly all the cars came by. He'll be all on his own now, and now the team should certainly send somebody back to look after him. But Eric is not one of the great climbers of the world, but certainly one of the great aggressive bike riders. And there you can see somebody has been told by the team management to sit back and wait and try and pace Eric back into the team.
You won't be too happy about that, having to chase back at this crucial stage. Well, I couldn't catch that.
Another small 1 kilometre to the summit of this climb.
Third category climb again. Plenty of them around here. That's where we are. You see them in plunge down, and then we start the climb up to the finish. So they're giving this a second category climb rating.
Well, it's not really
a bit generous, I think.
I think it is a little bit generous. This is the second of 2 climbs which came very close together, the Col de Cour. Once they go over the summit of this, a bit of respite for these riders, because they'll go downhill for about 5 kilometres, and then they will certainly be in the outskirts of Toulon. But unfortunately, they'll be able to look up to the left-hand side and see towering above them the old citadel, which looks down on the port of Toulon, the great naval port, and that's where they will have to ride up to finish this stage.
It looks as though Nicolas Jalabert is suffering a little bit there. Now, it looks like the style of Cadel Evans trying to push away.
Like the style of Axel Merckx.
Is it really?
It's a big, strong boy, I tell you. I think Cadel is just holding back in the front end of the main group, being looked after by Van Sommeren. But that was a big lanky figure there. Just got the bands there of Belgian national champion on his sleeve. That's an indication that it is Axel. Had to carry a very famous name throughout his whole career there. 500 meters to the summit of this climb. It's Fritz on the front there, again followed by Serpellini. Serpellini actually looking very good here, while Matty Hayman seems to be having a hard time just staying on the wheel.
Well, this is the Col du Cour de Garde, and it's the penultimate climb of the day. The next one will take them up to the finishing line. Fritz, who has been riding extremely well here, just picking off the mountains. He won the Col de Beausset. He also won the Côte de Saint-Anne-d'Evenot. And we'll see how he gets on here. But the way he's feeling is frisky. He's going to build himself up a few more points in the King of the Mountains, I think.
Nicolas Jalabert got caught out there. He was on the wrong end of Matty Hayman's wheel, and once the gap came, he wasn't able to get across it. But Nicolas Fritz is looking rather good there. Serpellini too is rather confident. A little bit of aggression on the front end of the peloton. That's Axel Merckx. And
that's probably Inigo Questa having another little dig here.
I think that's Kasheskin in second place there for Crédit Agricole.
Well, we'll see how they go as he comes into our camera range. But this is his teammate Fritz, and I don't think any challenge going to come from Serpellini. That's the order over the top. Lovely, narrow, tortuous descents these. They call for a great deal of skill, because this is the part of France where they're not major mountains, but the roads kick.
This is Eric Decker still trying to get himself back on. At least he's back into the car, so there's a possibility that he could reintegrate the main field here. You see the urgency in his pedaling style. He knows he has to stay in contact with those cars if he's going to get back into the main field before they crest this hill.
Very, very unlucky to puncture at such a crucial time in the race. Here's the dizzy descent here. These are the sharp bends I'm talking about. Very tortuous way down. It looks as though Serpellini's got the Master of Descending award. He's on his way down ahead of the field. Hayman's coming back, so too is Nicolas Jalabert.
Beautiful descent, this nice and technical. You have to move across. You see, if you move across to the left-hand side, you sweep right across the apex of the corner there to keep your impetus as high as possible. Il Baleares there at the front thinking about something for them, and Eric Decker's going to have to pick his way right the way through the cars here to try and make sure he catches up before the bottom of the descent.
You probably heard them shouting there to the gendarme to drop back, because Rabobank's taking them down here. They won't go past him too quickly. Not strictly legal, as the riders begin that same descent now, and if we pull back long enough we might well see Eric Decker now and his teammates. Oh, we're not going to show you anyway, but he's not very far off the tail of that bunch now. It's been a good chase.
Good ride here, leading down Il Baleares. Alejandro Valverde there in second position. Axel Merckx up there in third, the big tall Longines figure of the Davitamon Lotto rider. It's a beautiful descent, this, keeping the pace nice and high. You have to make sure you go into those corners with the gear selected properly before you come out, then accelerate up to a maximum of around about 60 kilometers an hour. Place not to be is at the back there, because you get subjected to all the accelerations and decelerations. It's a narrow road, very technical. Put the brakes on now, cut on the inside of the corner. Cepelini looks so relaxed.
You think we're coming around the same corner twice there, wouldn't you? But it's not, it's a different corner. It looks the same. And this time they've mastered Cepelini, they brought him back, and it's just Frisch who's in a spot of bother as he tries to hold him on this very tortuous descent. It spoils your line a little bit with those small walls, because if you do get out of line, then your knuckles go just about the same height as the handlebars down that wall, and it's very painful.
The important thing to do is to try and pick a line so you don't have to change your line halfway around the corner, because if you can just get a nice smooth line, you lose that little bit less momentum and keep the pace nice and high. A good long straight line there. Everybody's basically having a look at the back wheel of the rider in front. There was Thomas Voeckler going around there. I wonder if he's going to plan something later on in the afternoon. Still Il Baleares in control, Alejandro Valverde. Still pretty high up in the overall classification. You know, he's got a very good chance of... oh, now, the cars have been stopped there. That means Eric Decker is not that far from getting back onto the peloton.
No, because this is the chief referee's car, this one, so they're now allowed him through the door. Just got to settle down in the living room, and it'll be all safe to get down to the foot of Montferrand. 40 seconds is the gap to the leaders. That was an extremely good chase by Eric Decker and his teammate who was helping him there. But his poor old teammate that gave up his wheel, he'll be coming in a little bit later today, I think.
I think he'll be a long way behind by now. We're inside 10 kilometers to go. You can just see in the bottom the outskirts of the town of Toulon. And I put us at around about 5 kilometers to the start of the final climb of the day. These guys are still holding on to around about 3/4 of a minute. And I hate to be the bringer of doom and bad tidings, but you know what, Phil? I have a feeling they're going to get caught right at the start of the climb. And oh, it's 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Well, those climbs, we said it wasn't really good for the second category on the way up, but when you see how long it is on the way down, perhaps I was wrong, perhaps it was a fair estimate to give it a second category rating. This is the long way down now. These are the big efforts being made, and obviously Il Baleares have got a plan here. It's got to be to launch Valverde up Montferrand.
And that's the idea here this afternoon. Alejandro Valverde, the unbelievable revelation of Spanish cycling. Here's confirmation of that climb. There's 7 points there for Frisch ahead of Cepelini. And I think it was Nicolas Jalabert went across there in third place. You can hear the acceleration of the motorbike. It's very difficult for a motorbike on a technical descent like this to actually stay in front of the race, and very often you might just hear the exhaust pipes just touching down when the motorbike just leans down to try and keep the speed as high as possible going around these corners. But Frisch here in the yellow jersey of Saunier Duval has actually lost the line of the riders who were with him.
Yeah.
That's because he's taking some pretty awful lines around these corners.
Well, he's done enough to get up into second place in the King of the Mountains, but he's still a considerable way behind the leader this morning, and that's David Moncoutier. Moncoutier a couple of days ago was on a long breakaway and picked off the mountains on that occasion, and he keeps a fairly good lead in that competition. But Nicolas Frisch here is having to work really hard just to hold that breakaway in sight, and he's using a lot of energy. The peloton are descending just behind him now.
What he needs to do is to get on the wheel of Matty Hayman as quickly as possible, just inside 8 kilometers to go. But I think what's more important, every time we get a time check, it is now starting to come down very sensibly. The last time check was 28 seconds. Il Baleares trying to set this up now for the foot of the Montferrand. Moving up there as well, you can see the Saunier Duval riders. They're thinking about Constantino Zabaya. See whether or not they can move him up a little bit further in the overall classification. But this is a very tricky and precarious descent, and it's actually rather nasty. 25 seconds, because if you go down a long descent like this, it actually has a habit of cooling down the muscles, and then all of a sudden you want warm muscles again to start the climb, and that's what really makes the Montferrand a very difficult ascension. There's the port.
Oh, it's a lovely city. It's a big naval port, as Paul said, but there is Montferrand. It's a lovely view at the top. Well worth the ride up there, I think. although the riders won't agree, of course. It's a very traditional approach, this, to the climb Montferrand. The nasty ups and downs, then through the outskirts of the city, and then we swing away and onto the climb. They might just about get on the climb ahead of the race, but once on the climb, then I think that big pack is just going to rip apart.
Well, the big problem for these guys, Phil, is they've been away for an awful long time as well. They've been able to survive over the early climbs, but once they start the climb, I think the guts will go out of them and they'll find their legs turning to jelly, because not really one of these riders is a great climber.
Well, we talk about races having queen stages. They're meant to be the hilliest and the hardest. This is definitely the queen stage of Paris-Nice. The race to the top of Montferrand. Very often the rider who wins here wins the race. And remember, we're still covered by second at the top of the leaderboard. And that in itself is quite normal in Paris-Nice. But now it looks as though the chase is on in earnest, and the leaders are going to have their hands full now, because they've worked pretty hard just to hold a half a minute advantage here.
Looking back there was a quick glimpse, and in fact, this is a bit of a regrouping here as we look down at the convoy of team cars starting to set themselves up for the final few kilometres of the day. And this is Fritsch just about to make the contact, but he hasn't quite got there yet.
And just about to start the climb as well, because this is where we turn towards the mountain now. 18 seconds the gap. Just as he gets on, he may bring along about 100 people for company. We've had reports of 4 riders abandoning, nobody of note so far on the stage today.
A reminder there, if you look at the platane trees at the side of the road there, no leaves on them at all. It's not quite springtime. There's Kim Kirkin moving up on the right-hand side. He might not be too far away at the end of the day. There you can see the dark blue jersey of Liberty Seguros. That is Jörg Yats. Alexander Vinokourov is no stranger to this climb here of Montferrand. Maybe not the right time to take your jacket off, Mr. Fritsch.
Well, it's going to get warm now for sure. If he throws it off, it'd be a great souvenir. I don't think he'll be doing that. But the new rules now, as part of the Pro Tour, the riders are not allowed to take their crash helmet off, even on the climbs that take them up to the finishing line. So they've got to be aware of that. 16 seconds the gap. Here they come. And everybody knows now they must be feeling extremely nervous. This is when it's pure strength now. The men who feel they've got it are going to give it.
Well, there's Jens Voigt on the right. It's like a roll of honour there. Jens Voigt, David Rebellin, Jörg Yats. Right through the middle, Alexander Vinokourov. And these guys are being caught at the worst possible time.
What a time to get caught. They're going to have no resistance. The riders are going to go straight by them. And they've got to get to the top to ride again tomorrow. Sitting here at the back of the race is Frederic Bessy, the Cofidis rider. And there's Karlström, the champion of Finland, who seems to like riding near the back of the peloton.
He's been at the back for the last 4 or 5 days, and now then this looks like Zabaya moving off the front. Jörg Yats is the man to respond there in the dark jersey. Alexander Vinokourov. There is Jens Voigt in about 4th position. You can tell him by that bouncy style. He's all over the machine. A little bit further back, you see Alexander Vinokourov in the pink jersey of T-Mobile. Nice piece of road here. This is basically the first few kilometres of the climb.
Always
Voigt,
narrow, though.
Voigt at the front. There's Alexander Vinokourov in 5th position. Saunier Duval have got Constantino Zabaya. There's Alejandro Valverde over to the left-hand side. Now here's a move.
There's an attack up the inside. Everybody looking at him. Any invitations? Anybody coming?
I think this is Frank Schleck moving to the front. Trying to whip up the pacemaking. The young son of Johnny Schleck, who used to ride on the same team as Eddie Merckx. And at the back of the group, number 71 there, Floyd Landis. I think he's taken this Paris-Nice as very much a training program for him.
Yes, well, it's early days for some, while others are feeling it might be their day today. That's Peña from Euskaltel with a little kick upwards. Now take a look at the back of the peloton. It's starting to open there now as riders slip away. They know the limit for the day. This is going to be a battle, probably in the end by about half a dozen riders or more.
Jörg Yats accelerating ahead there of Alexander Vinokourov. Vinokourov, I think, will try and wait until the last possible moment. He knows where he's had success in the past. There's Alejandro Valverde moving up. Then there's Jens Voigt looking over his shoulder. Vinokourov knows just the right moment to hit there. You can see moving up through the middle there as well is Cadel Evans. And this is the damage that's being done at the back of the group. Arrière de la course. That's probably where I would be once. In fact, can't see my mind, but I finished
Tour
fifth
of the
on the
Mediterranean.
Montferrand. Oh, very good. You remember that.
Paul Sherwin finished second, everybody, in the Tour of the Mediterranean. Or were you the King of the Mountains? I can't remember.
Oh,
now.
both. King of the Mountains, points classification, and fifth at the top of the
Can
Montferrand.
you believe that? We've lived on
Hard
this
to believe.
story for years.
Yeah, too many. That's Moncoutier. He's the King of the Mountains.
First time we've seen him, but here he comes, and he still is the leader in the King of the Mountains, despite the efforts of Fritsch today.
This is Contador moving up
That's
as well.
an interesting one. Alberto Contador refound himself. He was very seriously ill, and he's come back, and he's riding exceptionally well now. He got a great result in the Tour Down Under.
There's no response there. Now this could be rather interesting for Liberty Seguros. It's a team tactic here because Jorg Yats is coming across the group there. They put Contador slightly off the front to try and use him as a leapfrog as Yats comes up at 4 kilometers to go, but they're not getting rid of Jens Voigt. Thank you very much.
There's a lovely view of Toulon if you look over the shoulders of the riders, but this is a serious effort by Contador now to try and get Yats into a position where he can again win Paris-Nice. Just
Evans.
under 4 kilometers to go, and Cadel Evans, you're right, is just behind there, Jens Voigt. Voigt just will try his hand at anything, time trialing, mountaineering or sprinting. A little bit of trouble at the back here for Dario Frigo, past winner of this. Hasn't quite got it this time out, no.
Absolutely not. 4 kilometers to go for him, but he's already around about 30 seconds in arrears. Moving up through the pack here, we get a chance to see who's in difficulty.
The Battle of Montferrand, Axel Merckx there. He's also a little bit down the pace now, because when our motorbike starts cutting through the riders, it's never a good sign.
Well, that's Sabaya just at the back there in the yellow jersey of Saunier Duval. A little bit further back, David Rebellin is still there as well in the pale blue, but he just seems to be hanging on there, and Moncoutier just bringing them across. But look at the face here of Jorg Yats. He's actually talking to Contador, trying to talk him into really dishing out the pain at the front of this group. And Jens Voigt, well, he looks superb to me. I don't think they're going to get rid of him quite that easily.
The overnight leader, Vincenti Range, we haven't really seen him at all day. He's nowhere in this front group, so he's definitely offering his jersey up for grabs today. Could well be by the winner of the stage, of course, and then over the final weekend to come, it's going to be tough to dislodge. Number 113 here, Christoph Brandt, back on the team with Lotto after his drug scare last year. He was found innocent in the end and reinstated in the team.
Darius Baranovsky. A lot of big names being tailed off here as we move up through the main field. That, I think, is the group of the heads of state. Just caught a glimpse of Bobby Julich. He was in that group as well. So Team CSC have got 2 riders in the group. And actually, that is rather strange because that was Alexander Vinokourov who was going off the back. Now, that's a big surprise to me because over the last few years, he's really been the king of the Montferrand.
Superb piece of pacemaking here by Contador, and it's for one reason only, to get Jorg Yats back in the action. And his old teammate Jens Voigt sat behind him now as a rival, of course. They were on the same CSC team last year.
That's Gilberto Simoni still there as well for Lampre in about 6th or 7th position. He should enjoy this finish.
There's Cadel Evans.
There's Zabaya. There's Simoni, number 171. And there's Bobby Julich, Moncoutier, Valverde. All the big names are here, but this is now becoming a very small select group.
Watch out for Leonardo Piepoli as well, because he's the guy in yellow, the Saunier Duval rider. He can deliver some big... There he is. Some big... Oh, that's not him, in fact. That's Rodriguez who's gone up there.
Tricky Beltran.
Oh, this is further down.
This is a lot further down.
Yeah.
Tricky Beltran there with Thomas Vukler, and of course it looked like Chechu Rubiera as well. 3 kilometers to go. Moving up through the field, the other rider there was Tommy Danielson.
Yeah, doing
So
very
he's-
well. Just losing contact in the last couple of meters or so. There is
Vinokourov.
Vinokourov in trouble. Have a look at the view, Alexander. It really is well worth looking at.
I think that would be the best thing for him this afternoon because he's losing contact here. The winner last year of this stage to the summit of the Montferrand. Going around the corner, it is a beast of a climb, I tell you.
Road to know all this. It's well worth going to the top, though, if you're ever in this region of France, to have a look around the mountain and then enjoy the descent back down.
That was Frank Schleck just being dispatched there from Team CSC. So in this leading group, there were 2 CSC riders still present. There's Jens Voigt, Cadel Evans over to the left-hand side, and probably halfway down the group, I think I caught a very good identification of Bobby Julich. It's not quite that steep, that's the camera angle.
Well, they're going up it very well if it is that steep, I'll tell you.
There's
Big
Julich.
effort there. No, the leaky gas rider over there is Pelazzotti. And the King of the Mountains has made the split when it matters, David Moncoutier.
That's an incredible backdrop. That is the Mediterranean. Those guys have been waiting to see this for the last few days of racing, and now they don't really have a chance to appreciate it. It's a barren climb up here. Now there's a move going off the front. I think that would probably be Zabaya.
Well, I'll take your word on that one, but it's certainly a move by a man from the Sonia Duval team.
And this is Gilberto Simoni coming across the gap now as well.
This is a huge effort as we're heading up towards, I think it's 2 kilometres to go. Gilberto Simoni, a little bit surprised to see him finding this sort of form right now, but he feels confident to move away. It's up to Yacht to close the gap because Alberto Contador doesn't have it anymore. That view there reminds me so much of Cape Town in South Africa, because we finished a stage of the Tour of the Cape on a hill called Signal Hill above the city there, and it looks just like that view.
So that wasn't Zabaya, that was Gomez, and this is a good move here by Gilberto Simoni. This is Jose Angel Gomez moving
Caught and
across the
passed by
gap.
the look of it. No, he's coming back. But this is an extraordinary. I don't think we would have really tipped Simoni to have won this stage, and he's got a huge gap over the field. There's been no reaction at all, and it is 2 kilometres to go. Well, this will be a huge morale booster for Gilberto Simoni. He didn't have anything like this form when he was down in Australia, but he might thank his days in the sun right now.
I'll tell you what, he's a very specialist climber when it comes to races like this. Moncoutier trying to get away. There is a reaction coming from Cadel Evans. Zabaya trapped in that group behind with Valverde. And this is Contador at the back. And that's not surprising, really, because he's the man who set this up for Jorg Yachts.
Done well to hang on even at this moment. But look at this now. The gap has opened here. This is the Gilberto Simoni of old here. The man who has twice won the Giro d'Italia. Last year he had an in-house fight with his young teammate Damiano Cunego. Who's to say he won't have the same in May this year? But right now he's out to establish the fact he's not past it, because he is going clear of everybody on the most prestigious stage of Paris-Nice. Montferrand inside at 1.6 kilometres to go.
Well, Gomez is not giving up there, just holding on in the yellow jersey of Sonia Duval. But the way that Gilberto Simoni is going here, Phil, I don't think anybody's going to catch him. Out of the saddle, he's got a lot of energy left in that pedalling style. One man not enjoying the steeper part here is number 21, Jens Voigt. Just in front of him is David Rebellin. But Voigt, all credit to him, is still in contact with this group. There's no gaps really appearing in the group of the top men in the overall classification. Julik just sitting in about third position there, moving up to get himself onto the wheel of Alejandro Valverde. Go on, Jens, dig just that little bit deeper. Stay in contact.
As he will. As he will. He'll hold on, even if he has to lasso them, I think. Jens Voigt just easing back a little bit there. But this is the man who's showing us his climbing prowess of old. Hasn't won a race since August last year. Won the Tour of Bonita, I think it was. But he is a pure climber, Gilberto Simoni. He can't ride the time trial, he can't sprint, but give him a mountain and he's absolutely brilliant.
Well, take your hat off to Gilberto Simoni. Let's not forget he's won mountain stages in all of the 3 Grand Tours, the Tour of Spain, Tour of Italy, and of course in the Tour de France. He's looking over his shoulder now, and I don't think anybody's going to come back to him. He's looking to see if he can catch a glimpse of the kite, and I think it's just there around the corner, inside of 1 kilometre to go.
Passing the Belgian encampment there, that blue truck. But Simoni, I don't think can be caught now. He's managed to get clear of just about everybody. And this is Pelazzotti, who's trying to launch a little bit of a move now.
Yep. Nice move by Pelazzotti. Cadel Evans there in third position is being very attentive. Jens Voigt, on the other hand, I think Phil now has given out his ticket and said, well, I'll just get to the finish in my time and on my schedule.
He'll have seen this barrier, he'll have seen the kite, but, you know, he's fully expended now, I think. Over the top, though, a little bit of a kick downhill. Bit of anger taken out of the mountain now. Chance for Gilberto Simoni. Listen to the crowd shouting at him, allez, allez, allez. They appreciate a climber, even if he is Italian on French soil. Pelazzotti is moving up the counter-attack here. That's Gomez, and also with him, Cadel Evans.
Rebellin in difficulty here now in the pale blue, just going around that corner. He's going to have to stay in contact. Let's not forget he was second overall last year. 20 seconds from the Tête de la Course, Gilberto Simoni, to the chasers inside the last kilometre. And the way he is going up this climb, Phil, nobody's going to catch him right now. As we look back, we'll get a chance to see who is chasing in second place.
Well,
it's a
not
long
gonna,
look back.
It is. It's going to be a very rewarding result for Simone. It's not going to do anything about his overall position. And you know, it depends what's happened to Bobby Julich. You might have seen him. I can't remember seeing him for a recent while. But if he's still in this leading group, he could be the next candidate for the race lead, and that would be a result for CSC.
Because I haven't seen anything of Cancellara or even of Juan Antonio Fletcher. Any of the riders from Team Fassa Bortolo seem to have been very much noticed by their absence here this afternoon. So yeah, Bobby Julich in that group. I did catch a glimpse of him moving up into second or third place in that group. Would be the best man in the overall classification, and therefore the man most likely to take over the overall lead tonight.
Oh, the face now on Simone. Gibaud takes a nice look over his shoulder. He can have a couple of deep breaths there. No need to grimace, I don't think, because he's nearly home and dry. That'll never take off. I don't care what they say. As we come up now towards the finish, Gibaud is going to take this, and he'll have a chance to look down on the boys now. There's Gomez, I think it is, still hanging on. Where's the chase?
Chase is just there. That's Pellizotti, followed by Zabaya. The gap is 10 seconds. I think it's a lot more than that. Well, I suppose it's 10 seconds to Gomez, but 20 seconds to the rest of the chasers. Pellizotti doing a very nice ride, keeping himself high up in the overall classification. I would think right now Gilberto Simone is looking around every one of these corners saying, where is the finish?
Well, it's a lovely crowd up here, one of the best I've seen, I think, for a long time on Paris-Nice, enjoying the spring sunshine. Still in March, of course, but now down by the Mediterranean. And this is still Gomez. Couldn't hold the wheel of Simone, but still hanging on for second place. Oh dear, but maybe won't be getting second place because Pellizotti is bringing up that little group of four.
Coming up slowly but surely, Cadel Evans was in that group. It's now starting to hurt a fraction here, Gilberto Simone, but he's still got that energy in his pedaling action to move up, and he doesn't have to worry anymore because he's inside of 200 meters to go.
What a wonderful feeling this will be. Gilberto Simone is back. He was out of it, but getting very valuable miles in the Tour Down Under in Australia, but he's back now, and this is going to be a terrific win for him. It won't do much for his overall position, but it will be a wonderful feeling inside. He's going to get this victory. This is a big moment for him, I think.
Very important at the start of the year when your name is Gilberto Simone, just to get the win under the belt, kicks a little bit more. Time to just to salute to the crowd there. As you said, it's a good crowd, but look at the time gaps, and the most important thing now is to see who is next to cross, and it's Cadel Evans.
They've caught Gomez, they've blown out Pellizotti, and Cadel Evans is taking on David Moncoutier. The king of the mountains we never saw all day when it mattered. He's now scoring points, and is he going to beat Cadel? No. Very good second for the Australian kangaroo. Third, David Moncoutier, and that'll certainly keep him in the lead in the king of the mountains. Get some points for that. Now, the big question is, where is Bobby Julich? Because he's the man we feel, and I think that was him just in front of Jörg Jatsk.
Well, that's Rebellin coming in there. And now we're waiting to see. This is Julich coming in now, and there is Contador.
He's done well to hang on. He's only just behind Jatsk.
Well, Bobby Julich, I think, will have stopped the clock there at around about 40 seconds as Contador comes in.
Jatsk was in between them.
So the important thing now is to see what the time gaps are. This is Frank Schleck there for Team CSC, pacing the beast there.
Still looking after him, look.
What a lad. What a boy he is there, Jens Voigt. He will not give up. He rides races like this on pure and utter guts.
Thomas Longqvist, the Swedish rider on France des Jeux, was the one splitting up the CSC sandwich there. And just rushing up there for Discovery is Jaroslav Popovic. He's joined the team this year. Big things expected for him. He'll either make the Tour of Italy or the Tour de France lineup for Discovery.
Came across the line there with Tricky Beltram.
Thomas Voeckler.
Similar style to the style he had at the Tour de France. They're all over his machine, just trying to stay in contact. The crowd will adore the finish of the French national champion.
Yes, it most certainly will indeed. You can hear the voice there of Daniel Manjas, the voice of the Tour de France. He has a statistical brain, I think. He hardly uses any paperwork and calls these riders out one after another.
Vinno coming through, Alexander Vinokourov. Not a great ride for him. Kim Kirken coming across the line now.
He dropped back alarmingly, I think.
Was Juan Antonio Fletcher, so he's disappeared a long way down. But I suppose you have to say the king of the Montferrand here this afternoon has to be the two-time winner of the Giro d'Italia, Gilberto Simone.
Well, we'll wait to see. He won't impress on the leaderboard. He's impressed himself with the stage win, though. We'll have to wait for the judges to calculate. But we think that Bobby Julich is now the new leader of Paris-Nice. and that will be a real turn-up for the buck.
Well, let's not forget, he's always been pretty good at Paris-Nice. He was awarded victory in Paris-Nice a few years ago.
There's a nice finish for you. It's always good when you come back. And there it is, Simoni beating Cadel Evans at 19 seconds, same time as Moncoutier, then came Gomez, Pelazzotti, Valverde was 6th in the end, looking right down the list. There's Bobby Julich, 41 seconds officially, that should be enough. We'll wait for the overall classification. Let's enjoy the salutations for the winner here at the moment of the stage. Bernard Hinault just popping in and out the picture on the far right, and there it is. Bobby Julich has the lead in Paris-Nice by 19 seconds over Zabaya and 20 seconds over Alejandro Valverde. Voigt is still in there, look. If he'd have hung on, he would be the leader again.
Well, that is an impressive ride by Team CSC, and for Bobby Julich, after finishing in 3rd place overall last year, this is something that I would think, Phil, that he has dreamt about for a long, long time.
That climb is just so hard. I hate to say it, but I don't like that climb. I hate that climb. But if it gave me the yellow jersey and this little lion for my daughter, I guess I like it a little bit more.
And I guess you will want to keep it for the upcoming 2 days.
Oh yeah, I mean, now we get into my neighborhood because I live in Nice. I know the roads really well. And this climb right here is special. It's not my best climb. The climbs that we do from here to the finish are more to my liking.
So with just the weekend to come, Bobby Julich has the lead when it could matter most. And Bobby Julich, don't forget, the 5th leader of this tour since Jens Voigt took out the prologue time trial. Now he knows all of the roads, as he's told us, as we race towards Cannes. But these roads around here in the Alpes Maritimes, Paul, are absolutely fabulous for bike races.
Great racing roads, absolutely, certainly. And this Arrière-Pays, the area around the back of Nice and the Mediterranean coast. This is the Discovery Channel, and it looks very much like the style here of Tommy Danielson trying to get off the front end of the group as they head up to the summit of that very small climb.
Let's get the pictures to settle down. They seem to be... Oh, no, they're not. But anyway, there they are. There's 3 riders going clear, and the CSC ride at the back is not Jens Voigt today.
This looks very much to me like the Col de Bourrigaille, a climb which comes just outside of Seyon, and certainly the picture not being very good here this afternoon. The Col de Bourrigaille comes out of the town of Seyon and heads down then towards the little village of Fayence, and then around the back end of the big lake around here, the Lac de Bassivière, and then the riders move over to the final climb of the day, the Col de Tanneron.
Well, there's quite a big little family of English-speaking bike riders live in this area. It's a great place to choose as a base while you're being a professional cyclist, including the likes of Bradley McGee and Baden Cook, the 2 top Australians. They're also based down here. This is a nice little working party getting away. Now today, it's up to Bobby Julich just to keep his eye on the men that matter, like Constantino Zabaya, 19 seconds back, Alejandro Valverde at 20 seconds, Jens Voigt, always dangerous, he's only 44 seconds back, and the defending champion Jörg Jatsk, who's 45 back. He's got to watch those guys, I think, and anybody else that goes, he's got to take a chance and let them go.
That was Frank Schleck moving across there for Team CSC. He'll be the team policeman to make sure that there's no dangerous moves go off the front end of this group. On the early slopes here of the Col de Bourrigaille, that's Tommy Danielson. There is in fact a small breakaway off the front of the main field, just hovering at around about 1.5 minutes. I think Bobby Julich will just look to see whether or not he can cover any dangerous little moves on the slopes of this climb. It's a long, hard running down towards the finish, and they've got to keep some reserves for that final climb of the day, the Col de Tanneron, followed by what has always been regarded as a very dangerous descent.
Yes, over the years, the history of the Côte de Tanneron, it is a very twisted descent. We've gone down it, and it's been absolutely shrouded in mist, low cloud. I remember Sean Kelly descending completely in the blind down there and saying to me at the finish, well, if you want to win the race, you've got to take chances. And of course, he did win the race, and he won this race 7 times in a row.
Well, that's Jens Voigt now, who's moved across to take over the control at the front end of the group, Arrière de la course. And
dear.
this is the back end of the group, and you can see a lot of riders not enjoying this Col de Bourigay.
Well, the rider is Daniel Becker of Germany, the Elis Brilius rider there, and 183 is Angelo Ferland.
Very good sprinter, but he's not going to get himself over this climb here this afternoon. Very nasty road here, the slopes here of the Col de Bourigay, very lumpy. Gets broken up an awful lot during the winter, and I wouldn't be surprised when we get to the top of this climb to still see a little bit of snow at the side of the roads, because there is snow still on one or two of the mountains not too far away from here. The Alpes Maritimes, the Maritime Alps.
Look at these riders just dropping out of it here now, and that was Matthew Heyman who slipped away there as well.
Well, a long, hard day for him yesterday. It looked like Alexander Vinokourov having a spot of bother there as well.
No, it wasn't. It was Yakovlev for the Kazakhstan. Same country, same team,
Same
different
shape.
guy. And same shape, yeah. And this rider here is Laszlo Budrogi from Hungary, and he's slipping away. This is very early on to be dropped on this stage. And, you know, you're right about the snow, Paul, because there it is. But if you get left at this stage and don't come back, then I think you're out of the race by the end.
Be one or two riders eliminated, because we are still looking at a long way to go from the finish of the Col de Bourigay. We have to drop down into Fayence, across to Peymeinade, and then after that a bit of respite before the start of the final climb of the day, the Col de Tanneron, which is shrouded in yellow flowers, the mimosa, which makes this part of the world very famous. Jens Voigt doing the job of teammate there at the front, keeping a very close eye. Now, this is the Tête de la Course, the first time we've had a chance to see them. A small breakaway which is very much dominated. That's Just Postuma there, the rider from Rabobank on the right-hand side.
T-Mobile is Bram Schmitz leading the pace. Française Jageur's got a man in here as well. And a quick step rider there too.
Jorge Ludovic is the rider in there as well for Domino Vacanzi. Further down, it's the big battle here really to try and dislodge Bobby Julich off the overall lead. This is definitely a big plan for Saunier Duval here this afternoon to try and put pressure on the yellow jersey.
Well, we can now run through the leaders for you in that breakaway. Aaron Kemps, the Australian boy, had a bit of a rough ride yesterday. He's in there for Liberty Seguros. Thomas Ziegler from Gerolsteiner. Bram Schmitz, T-Mobile. Mark Lotz, Quick Step. Jörg Ludwig from Domino Vacanzi, new team for him. He used to be with Seiko. Fabien Sanchez, Française des Jeux, and Cyril Dessel of AG2R. And the tall Rabobank rider there is Postuma, who Paul has mentioned. There they are, and that is the group. And they've been away for an awful long time here. Nobody's going to worry Bobby Julich. So this might be a breakaway to succeed. It's a perfect combination if it does.
That's Mark Lotz there in the blue shorts of Quick Step just in front. Pictures not being very helpful here this afternoon. That's all to do with the locking up of the signal going up to the helicopter and down to the finishing line. These guys have been given a certain amount of freedom. Nobody really dangerous in the overall classification. Just at the top there, take a right-hand turn, and now they start what is a fairly tricky descent down into the town of Fayence. They've just gone through the King of the Mountains point. Just sitting on the back there, Thomas Ziegler. Very happy to be in this breakaway. Great racing roads here around the back end of Nice.
It's beautiful.
I have to say, this used to be the area where the Peugeot team used to have its training camp for many, many years down in the village at the bottom, the little town of Fayence. This is Jörg Ludovic, looking very strong, and Jens Voigt chasing everything that moves off the front end of the group here this afternoon. He seriously is doing the job of policeman.
It is quite amazing. Here is a man sitting in 4th place overall in the race, and he still will not lay down and just have a little bit of a rest and try to find space for the attack that could give him the race tomorrow. Just one day to go after this, and remember, we're racing on the playground now of the race leader, Bobby Julich, and he's keeping a tight eye on things here.
Moved by Tommy Danielson coming off the front. Not going to go too far away, I don't think, from the sharp and keen eye of Jens Voigt, who just looks over to see if anybody else is coming and picks up the pacemaking all on his own.
Long thin line there, stretching them out a little bit.
Caught a glimpse of a rider at the side of the road there, and it looked as if it might have been Axel Merckx watching on as a spectator. The interesting thing is, Axel Merckx was actually kicked out of the race yesterday because he didn't know about the story the rule, I should say, that you're not allowed to take your helmets off on the final climb of the day. And so he threw his helmet off at the bottom of the climb, and the referees threw him out at the top of the climb.
Yes, well, we saw him on the climb, and he certainly had his helmet on when we saw him on the climb, because I was mentioning the fact that it was against the rules now to take your helmet off. It must have been much nearer to the finish where that happened. Well, bad luck for Axel Merckx, because at this stage of the year, these boys need the miles in the legs, and they need competitive miles as well. The field here is quite irritated at the moment and trying to get something going, but the boys up front are staying clear.
Well, you can see the snow still at the side of the road. It's a beautiful part of France here to come just a little bit further back. This is the Arrière de la Course, the back end of the race. This is Sylvain Chavanel, and that's a bit of a surprise to see him in difficulty.
Well, breakaway Paul got away after 5 kilometres there. Big usual flurry of attacks to see what's going on for the day's racing, and they all got away. And really, it's been gaining time ever since. It might lose a bit of ground now, though, because this is a good reaction being started here.
Very good reaction. Look at the surface of the road there. Again, it's one of those very difficult surfaces. It rolls along, and especially at this time of the year, it's hard to actually get that rolling resistance to be reduced. Voigt has left his place there to Frank Schleck over on the left-hand side. A good rider, Frank Schleck. He finished in the top 10 overall in Paris-Nice last year. Jens Voigt was 4th, Bobby Julich 3rd, with Jörg Yats, when he raced for CSC last year, getting himself the overall win. Total domination by that team. A lot of Discovery Channel jerseys moving to the front, starting to be a little bit more aggressive in the early part of this season.
Well, a breakaway won't affect David Moncoutier, who's keeping his lead in the King of the Mountains and keeping an eye on the second-place rider. So he'll be very happy with the way things are going now. Fritz is in the field here, and the boys up front can't affect his overall lead in the mountains, so he's got absolutely no reason to chase either. And in battle, it's only the 5 or 6 riders within a minute who can affect the destiny of that yellow and white jersey, rather. So this is a perfect combination, this break. There's too many big boys back in the peloton with absolutely no reason to counter the move.
Nobody dangerous at all to the top men in the overall classification. As you can see, just sitting at the back here, 1 or 2 riders are quite happy just to be in the bike race. The man just sitting right on the back there is one of the Crédit Agricole riders, Nicolas Vaugondi, former national champion of France. And you can see the peloton now starting the descent of the summit of the Col de Bourrigaille. If you take a left-hand turn and carry on up, you can go right to the summit of the Col de Mons, where the Criterium International used to finish many, many years ago. Well, that's a big gap. 3 minutes and 25 seconds for the leaders back to the main field.
Yeah, it's a big gap. It's been more. Little flurry of attacking there has brought it down a bit. But there's no determined effort here to bring that group back, I don't think, at the moment, as we race down towards the shores of the Mediterranean today, the Millionaires' Playground, the Côte d'Azur. And tomorrow, well, we're climbing the Col d'Ez. I think it's 3 times tomorrow the climb of the Col d'Ez. Used to be a double day in Paris-Nice, road race into the Promenade des Anglais, a little bit of a rest for lunch, and then up time trial style, a mountain time trial to finish the race on the Col d'Ez. It's road race Nice-Nice tomorrow, and that'll be an interesting stage.
It certainly will. Just looking down here at these riders, it reminds me of an anecdote of when I raced in Paris-Nice a few years ago. Jean-Luc Van den Broeke, my teammate, had taken off to get himself the stage victory. He was a long way down in the overall standings, and Philippe Crepel, who was the team manager, wanted to get across the gap, so he overtook the peloton, which was no easy thing to do on a descent like this. And he was hurtling down the descent with the mechanic sitting out of the car window trying to adjust a bicycle on top of the roof rack, and he missed a corner. And as when we came down, we found Philippe Crepel in the middle of the field and the mechanic white with fear.
Oh my goodness. Well, I've had some terrible descenting cars down these very roads over the years. Paris-Nice, one of my favourite races to follow at the start of every year. I witnessed most of Sean Kelly's 7 victories. And the weather conditions change so violently, so quickly. But usually when you get to this stage of the race, it stays good. Although I can remember some bad days in the Alpes-Maritimes over the years gone by. But these roads are treacherous when they're wet. The corners are so sharp, the roads are narrow, they're sinuous. And until you get off this mountain, you're virtually on the borders of the Mediterranean once you leave these climbs. Nice little bit of a descending style here. And this is Bram Schmitz up in the breakaway.
Getting himself nice and low down into that aerodynamic position to try and get onto the tail of this group. These guys have led the race for an awful long time, and they're now trying to think about whether or not they are going to survive. I think if they want to survive off the front end of this group, they're going to have to hold on to a lead of around about 2 minutes at the top of the Col de Tanneron, because even though it's downhill very rapidly into the outskirts of Cannes, it's around about 20 kilometers to go from the top. And so the main field will charge into Cannes on the final few kilometers.
And normally we used to finish down in a little sort of suburb, Mandeleur, but now we're racing into Cannes today, and the Mandeleur is right on the base of that climb, and it's all or nothing on the way down, because if you've got the nerve, then you'll win as you run off the climb into the town. But we're off to Cannes, which is equally nearby.
Team CSC have very much got control of the front end of this main field. They're in 4th position in the yellow and white jersey of leadership. You can see Bobby Julich. He's just got to tick the days off now. Just 2 days to go and he can win this bike race. But he's got 2 very serious riders breathing down his neck. Constantino Zabaya and, of course, Alejandro Valverde. And
There's no room
only
for a
at a
puncture,
few
really, is
seconds. No, it's so very close still. You'll have to be very attentive, although I have to give advantage to Bobby Julich over the final terrain. But with the time bonuses out on today's stage and at the finishing line, there is still the possibility that Alejandro Valverde could dethrone Bobby Julich off the top spot.
That's another reason, of course, for Julich's team to try and keep this breakaway in the clear, to wipe out all the bonuses along the way. And it's a combination, really, unless there's a violent reaction. Look, it's 3:38 now. I can't see this group coming back.
Well, it's good for Bobby Julich to see this group stay clear, because they will certainly take up all the time bonuses. This is the small town of Fayence, and by road it's only about 5 kilometers to Seyon, but these guys have done about 15 kilometers. It's just up the side of the mountain and back down again. Beautiful little provincial town here, and not too far away from the celebrity playground of Saint-Tropez. If you go straight across the valley here, over the climb on the other side, and you'll drop down into Saint-Tropez, Plessis-Sambre, where the Fiat team of Eddy Merckx used to train in the late 1970s. Most of these guys not too worried about that. What they are thinking about, what everybody's getting into their minds now, is the Col de Tanneron. From Fayence, they've got around about 6 or 7 flat kilometers to the Lac de Saint-Cassien. Over the Lac, a very beautiful backdrop for the bike race, and then it's the start of the Col de Tanneron. Look at the master, the general at the front there on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
Turn it off. This is a good situation for us, and Jens Voigt just saying there, okay, we'll let these guys have a little bit more freedom, because nobody is going to threaten our overall superiority.
Well, CSC with Jörg Jatsk found the winner of this race. Jatsk left the coupe and he went across the Liberty Seguros. So they've turned to Bobby Julich, and it looks like with 1 day to go, 1.5 days to go, they may still have the winner on their team, and they're certainly riding a great race here. They're not chasing this breakaway because they know the value of leaving those riders out front. And certainly they're swiping all the bonuses and they're taking the day's prizes, and CSC will be very happy about that. So it's down now to really the team of Sonia Duval to try and whip up the pace. I'm not sure they've got the strength in depth.
Well, I think they'll wait until they get to the slopes now of the Col de Tanneron. And of course, Alejandro Valverde, he's got the big advantage. He can sit back, let everybody else do the attacking, and he can try and get himself a bonus down towards the end, although the way the race seems to be unfolding here, those time bonuses are disappearing from the rider from Ile Baleares.
Well, the sun is very welcome today. It's around about 60 degrees Fahrenheit, which feels very pleasant after the chill air of a couple of days ago. Hard to imagine now that the race was almost cancelled because of snow, as the riders now course their way to the Mediterranean. CSC are doing everything right now. They're in control of the head of this field. And also, when you've got a good team, because these roads are very narrow in this region, you have the ability to literally block off the attacks, and that's in the favour again of CSC.
There's a move just going off the front there. I'm not quite sure who that was. I think it could have been Ludovic. There it is. It is the Domino Vacanze rider. Now he's decided, and this is a very strange move for him, he's going a long way to go to the finish, because we're still looking at around about 25 kilometers to go.
Well, Hugh Ludwig has been pretty happy and in action on the small climbs all day, there or thereabouts over the green line every time, and now he's decided to give it a go. He's a German rider always seems to have found himself placed on foreign teams. He rode with the Italian team Seiko. He speaks Italian as well. And now he's moved on to Domina Vacanzi. And he's a rider who speaks very, very good English. And now this is a big move by Jorge.
Very big move. He's just moving along here towards the town of Peymeinade and not too far away from starting the Col de Tanneron. He obviously felt the impetus was going out of this breakaway group. They have led the race for an awful long time. They hold about 3.5 minutes advantage over the front end of the peloton. And I think a lot of these riders now are starting to nurture thoughts that they can actually steal the victory away from the main field, who spread across the road like that on the outskirts of Peymeinade indicate they're not chasing. And the gap reflects that, 4:17.
4:17, now it's going back up, you see. And all CS here on the front. Last man on the string is Bobby Julich in the yellow and white jersey. Very happy with life at the moment. Team doing a great job. No reaction here. Now, they may be gambling in believing they can win this race, those riders just behind Julich, tomorrow when we go over the Col d'Ez 3 times. And they may be feeling, or they're going to steal those few seconds on the Col de Tanneron before it flips us down into Cannes. Now, this is Jörg Ludwig, turned pro back in 1997. He's 29 years of age now, and he did 5 years with the Seiko team, which he's just left at the end of last season. And he picked up only 2 victories for them, but he's such an aggressive bike rider. Meanwhile, this is Kevin Hulsmans here. Unusual to see him, but he looks as though he's struggling.
Well, he's got caught in no man's land. In fact, we're still looking at the leading group of the road, and these 2 riders are halfway across the gap. He slipped away with Philippe Gilbert on the descent of the Col de Bourrigaille, down in the little tortuous descent into Fayence, and it's not a very good position to be in because he's halfway across the gap. The gap, to me, is just a little bit too big to close.
Well, Gilbert trying to profit a little bit on his good form because he was second on this. He won a stage of the Tour of the Mediterranean in February over roads very close to these roads. He also picked up a fairly hilly race, the Tour de Haute-Var, which again is in this region, the region of the Var. And I suspect, Paul, that the points victory in the Tour de l'Avenir back in 2002 was one of his great highlights.
Yes, a lot of people reckon that Gilbert is going to go a long way in the game. He's a very good sprinter, but he does have the ability of being able to get himself over 1 or 2 of these small rolling hills. The peloton spread across the road like that. I think shortly, Phil, will pick up the tempo because you've got to start the Col de Tanneron in the first 10 or 15 places because it's a very narrow climb. There's not too many places for overtaking, and of course followed by a very tortuous and dangerous descent.
Well, weather forecast is clear. Lovely views today. We've seen the Tanneron completely enclosed in mist. I actually came round the corner once and I saw the photographer lying completely across the road. His motorcycle had crashed into the barrier, was still upright in the bent barrier, and we were able to bundle him into our car before the race came down just behind us, and a narrow catastrophe was avoided.
There's a beautiful lake of Saint-Cassien. If you go across the top of there, there's a magnificent climb called the Corniche de l'Esterel.
Oh, it was
it's
a
very, very red brick, and it looks very much here as if the Rabobank rider has come across the gap here. We're on the early slopes here of the Col de Tanneron, so Ludwig is about to get picked up there by the Dutch rider Postuma.
Postuma, tall, lanky man. He's moved up a notch this year. He finished last season getting a sample of what life is like in the Rabobank team, having ridden, I think it's for 3 years, in the nursery squad, Rabobank 3 squad. He's now riding for the big boys, and that's the ambition of all of those riders on the Rabobank team.
Back in the main field, the attacks are certainly starting to come. Look at the work being done on the front of the group there by Jens Voigt. These 2 riders are still holding on to around about 1.5 minutes of their advantage, and the rest of the group that they were with really seems to have splintered quite dramatically. Rabobank rider has pulled himself up to Jörg Ludwig, who took off a long way to go. We're not too far away now from the summit of the Col de Tanneron, the 2nd category climb, the summit of which is still 20 kilometers to go to the finish. Well, 20.4 if you want to be exact.
Yeah, as I say, we don't drop into Mandelieu this time. We go across to Cannes, a little bit further for the riders to go. Postuma's done a good ride here because this breakaway got away, you know, just about 3 miles into this stage, 8 kilometres or so. All of them have still got an advantage over the field. None has been swept up to our knowledge, so they're still all clear. The one rider here is the AG2R rider who's trying to get on turn. This will be Dessel, Cyril Dessel it is. He's also coming forward now from the field. But he has split up that breakaway. It's going to be every man for himself to hold the field off now.
Here's Alexander Vinokurov. Now he will remember winning this stage as well. Now it looks as if there's a move coming from Jorg Yats over there on the left-hand side. Or it could have been Contador, actually.
Well, we'll have a look. But I was just thinking, Yats, in defence of his title, has ridden a very good race, hasn't he? It's his Contador, I think.
It is Contador. 500 metres to the summit here for these two riders, and it'll be interesting to see how they tackle the descent, because this is one of the scary descents of the sport. It's not exactly the same descent as the one that goes down into Mont-de-Lieu, and I remember a few years ago racing with Sean Kelly. You mentioned him winning Paris-Nice on 7 occasions. He was in second position coming into the Col de Tenneron, just behind Joop Zoetemelk, and he said to me, "Don't you be worrying, Paul, I'm going to crash him on the descent." Kelly actually crashed once on the descent. He went down so fast, but unfortunately for Joop Zoetemelk, he crashed twice going downhill, and Kelly ran out at the end of that race the overall winner yet again.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. I remember in one of those victories he had, he made the commissaires go back out to the 1 kilometre kite because he'd fallen and said it was at the kilometre to go, and they measured it. In fact, he was about 10 metres the wrong side, and he did lose that bit of time, but he still won the race that year as well. Incredible character, one of the great characters of not just Irish cycling, of course, but world cycling. Now, the current edition then of Paris-Nice, now reaching 20 kilometres to go. This fellow Postuma may only be 22 years of age, but it looks as though he's hurting the older man here. Jorg Ludwig has followed him over the Col de Tenneron. Meanwhile, still coming up the Col de Tenneron, what's left of the peloton. And of course, who else will be setting the pace but Jens Voigt?
And in very close attention there in second position, Cadel Evans, who's riding very well in this Paris-Nice, and Bobby Julich too over to the right-hand side in the yellow and white jersey of leadership, looking very comfortable. I'm trying to rack my brains out here to try and remember when is the last time I saw Bobby Julich leading a bike race like this. I do believe he was given the victory in the Criterium International a few years ago, although he finished in second place overall. It was Christophe Moreau who was the winner, and he was later disqualified for doping, so Bobby actually didn't lead that race. His biggest performance, obviously, we all remember, was 1998 when he finished third overall in the Tour de France. But since then, he's wallowed around for a couple of seasons. But since joining CSC, he really has become a young rider again. He's very keen, and he's very keenly being attacked here by Sonny Duval all of the time. Constantino Zabaya, let's not forget, is in second place in the overall standings.
He's got to go.
And I think they want to try and do something special here.
This is a good move by Zabaya. He's got to do it here. This is the last climb of the day. Once to the top, Bobby Julich knows he lives to fight the Tour out on the final day. Big move.
Actually, this is Gomez again. He was the man who went out. He really is trying to set something up. And that, I would think, just behind Kim Kirkin there is Constantino Zabaya. Just 500 metres to go to the summit, but Jens Voigt sweeping all of these attacks off as if he's swatting some mosquitoes.
Well, here comes the man from Luxembourg. There are hills in Luxembourg, not many big bike riders, mind you. It's only a small principality, the Royal Duchy of Luxembourg. But this is their champion, Kim Kirkin, and it looks like he might be best of the rest. Remember, we still have all of the riders in that breakaway clear. So there's no King of the Mountains points here. David Moncoutier is having a good day, doing nothing and keeping the lead.
Important for him. It looks like the Irish flag over there to the left-hand side.
Flag. Memories of days gone by.
Days gone by when Sean Kelly was the dominator of this event. Kim Kirkin from Luxembourg. And although Luxembourg hasn't produced that many great cyclists, one of your favourite cyclists came from there, Charlie Gall, the King of the Mountains, the Angel of the Mountains.
A wonderful, wonderful climber, Charlie Gall, the Angel of the Mountains. 20 kilometres to go for Kim and the rest who are following. It's beginning to look as though Bobby Julich will live to fight this out on the last day. One thing, Paul, we've never had an American winner of Paris-Nice. We've had some good riders from America in this race.
Some good riders. Armstrong himself ridden well in Paris-Nice in the past. Greg LeMond has done good performances here, but these are the two leaders. Ludwig having a bit of pain getting around these corners.
This is a terribly tortuous descent, this. It really is. It just twists and turns. It's in this region where they hold the Nice Triathlon as well on these roads. And it's a tough one. We've just come out of the Bay of Angels to climb up these hills. These roads just duck and dive, twist and turn. And I wouldn't have thought that Hoost Postuma can be... He's such a tall rider. You wouldn't think he'd be a very good bike controller.
Well, he seems to be having the advantage here over Ludwig. It's still 2.5 minutes back to the main field. These two guys with 20 kilometres to go can start to nurture the thought of holding on and disputing the victory, but I think they need to ride together. This is the remnants of the breakaway. This is Mark Lotz at the back here. Schmitz on the front.
Dessel must still be in the middle. He's not in that group.
This is a bit of a silly move here by Postuma, you know, because we're only just inside of 20 kilometers to go. And Ludovic is a very strong bike rider. I would have expected, really, that Postuma would have waited for the German, because the two of them together, I think, would have had a very good chance of survival. You know, from the bottom of this climb, there is still an awful long way to go to the finish.
Well, youthful exuberance, maybe we can call it. The first full year on the top Pro Tour team of Rabobank goes to Postuma, 22 years of age. Now looking here to get what will be an incredible stage when if it happens.
Taking some serious risks. Look at the way he's cutting these corners, trying to line himself up for the next one. There's the Mimosa on the left-hand side. Very famous, this part of the world, for the Mimosa. Cutting a nice line around these corners, Postuma, though. He's opening up a pretty serious gap of about 15 seconds.
Yeah, I've been a little bit generous there, Paul. He's 24, in fact, but he's only just barely 24. He's enjoyed his birthday during this Paris-Nice, in fact, at the beginning. So he's only just 24. And what a way to celebrate a great week in the Paris-Nice for him if he were to work.
Tell you what, he's just looked over his shoulders there to see what kind of damage he was doing. And the damage is being done at the front end of this Group 2. And it looks very much like the shape of Jens Voigt, taking them off the mountain nice and carefully, looking over his shoulder to make sure Bobby Julich is not being put under any pressure at all. Best way to control a descent like this is to make sure that you set a reasonable tempo. And look at Jens Voigt, what a professional bike rider, looking back to see what the position in that line is of Bobby Julich, and I would say Bobby is around about 6th or 7th.
It's perfect, just holding the peloton. They're not chasing that breakaway, they're controlling this descent to stay out of trouble. They know the dangers of the descent of the Col de Tanneron. And, you know, even when the roads aren't closed in this region, there are very few cars up here during the day. And Bobby Julich knows all about that, of course, because he trains up here. That's the overall situation. 19 seconds behind Zabaya, and just a hatful of seconds further back. In fact, there's 4 or 5 riders just within that 1 minute. Valverde, and there you are. We've got the 5th is to Jacques, last year's winner of 45 seconds, and the last man inside the minute is Frank Schleck from CSC. He ain't going to be attacking Bobby Julich, that's for sure.
Cadel Evans in 8th place overall, and Juan Antonio Fletcher still high up there in 9th. Bobby Julich a little bit further back. Cadel Evans moving up to 2nd place. Kim Kirken looks very good here. He's a bike rider I think we'll see progress an awful lot more this year. Alexander Vinokourov in the pink jersey over to the right-hand side, but there is never a CSC rider very far away from the front end of the peloton. And another Luxembourgian rider moving up to the front there, Frank Schleck. Father was a great lieutenant to Eddy Merckx. That's the result of the Col de Tanneron. So Cyril Dessel was still hanging on there in 3rd place, caught in no man's land, but never quite made the junction. Now back to Postuma here, still cutting a very fine line here down this descent.
He's descending here, reminding me a little bit like Stefan Rux in the Tour de France a few years back when he was clipping the corners.
Well,
aye. Well, they'll catch you out these corners. They almost caught our cameraman out as well there, but happily we've all survived, and our cameraman just keeps on shooting.
I don't know how he did that. I tell you what, that will knock the stuffing out of him. He just went around that corner too hard. He was very lucky there was space at the side of the road there to actually slow himself down and get back onto the bike. I think we may well just see that Ludovic will come back here, because when you go off the road like that, you just lose a little bit of nerve. And the fact that there he is, the fact I heard that klaxon go in the background, that was an indicator from the race referee that this man was coming back.
Well, the team cars will come down here, all tyres screaming, because these are such sharp bends. You have to be totally vigilant, moments relaxation of concentration, put him in more than a spot of bother just there.
So Cyril Dessel, he's about to get picked up as well. Gilbert, it's Philippe Gilbert actually, who was halfway across.
Yeah, he's falling back, or is he going forward? Who knows right now?
Looks as if he's about to get picked up. He was one of the 2 riders who was halfway across the gap just a little bit earlier. He got himself away with Kevin Hulseman, so they are about to get picked up by the front end of this peloton.
I think it might have been Fabien Sanchez, Paul, for Française des Jeux, one of the first men in the break, and he's been swept up now by Kim Kirken. So it looks as though they started to nip off those riders in the breakaway, and I really thought they weren't going to catch them. There's the brave face of the gendarme leading them safely away, hopefully, from the Col de Tanneron. Kirken has decided now to get round the CSC boys and get on with the chase, doing a darn good job just at the moment too.
I tell you what, Ludovic has not yet got onto the back wheel of Postuma there, who's just going around the corner. There's not very much more than 10 or 15 metres, but I tell you what, Postuma is not laying back.
No, this is the way to go downhill, the dizzy descents here. Beginning to level out a little bit. Jörg Ludwig needs to close this gap. He must never allow a Dutch cyclist who's famous for riding fast on the flat to get onto that flat, because he might go.
Well, they're actually just about to get onto the flat. That little sign at the side of the road there indicating that they're about to set themselves up to the left-hand turn. Here it is. And look at that, Ludovic just getting on at the bottom of the descent. He's very lucky to have done that.
We're not quite on yet, and that guy is accelerating heavily again. He's still holding off Ludwig, who has come desperately close. It's a huge effort required, and I think it's being delivered.
Well, it's being delivered. The big acceleration came out of the corner from Postuma again, and I would have thought as team manager, I would say to my man here, just wait. You've still got about 14 kilometres to go to the finish. You need some help and assistance, but I don't think he's too worried about that. He wants to ride on his own.
This man is settling in for what could be a very, very big day out for him. He's tall, he's gangly.
Oh, see the way he went around that corner. No fear. Excuse me.
He's a good bike rider.
Excellent
this guy's
handling.
a good bike handler.
Excellent handling. No fear at all. He would have probably opened himself up about 5 seconds over Ludovic there, because he went round that like a man possessed.
He's a former winner of the Olympia's Tour of Holland, which is a real battler's race. There's no hills in the Olympia's Tour. You fight the winds, you fight the riding in the echelons. You are a very, very good bike handler. And it looks as though Joost Postuma has decided, despite how close Ludwig has come, to try and ride him off.
Well,
I'm not sure that's not a silly gamble.
Ludovic hasn't given up yet, and I'm a little bit surprised that with these two riders being so close together, Postuma doesn't sit up and allow the German to come back to him, because we're on the flat part of the course now. They're holding on to an advantage of around about a minute and a half over the front end of the main field, and you know what? If they don't work together in unison, they may well find themselves getting caught inside of the last kilometre, which we very often see in a situation like this. You know, the main field is mean and nasty, and they don't care whether or not these guys have been on the breakaway for almost the whole stage. All they want to do is get the victory down towards the end.
Oh, what a result, though, for him, if it were to be so. His long legs there, coupled up with his long arms. He's got a very strong reach on that bike. He's in a time trial position. He is a good time trialist because he won the prologue of the Tour of Normandy back in 2003, which is one of the old top amateur races these days, of course, pros ride. And meanwhile, back in the chase group, which is the main peloton, Kim Kirken still leading the way. Jörg Jatsk, I think it is, just behind him, and CSC keeping an eye on things.
Third place is Jens Voigt, and he keeps looking back over his shoulder. Although he's at the front, he keeps looking back to see where Bobby Julich. Well, Bobby Julich is just a couple of places behind him there in fifth in the yellow and white jersey of leadership. The main field here, almost themselves off the descent of the Col de Tanneron, lining themselves up for that left-hand turn. And I make it still around about a minute or a minute 15 to this group. So those two riders at the front, if they can get together and sort themselves out and work, could just survive. But I have a feeling right now this group will more than likely catch them before we get to Cannes and the Mediterranean.
Well, this guy, if he's hearing you, Paul, is saying not likely, because he is stamping on those pedals. He's now inside 10 kilometres or 6 miles to run to the finish. I think he's got at least 2 minutes, but we haven't got a watch running, so we're not sure. And that's 2 minutes, 6 miles, they'll never catch him.
He's got a fabulous position on the bike. You see he's got himself back over the bottom graphic. That's an indication that he's the kind of rider who rides with absolute and sheer power. Probably not a very good climber, but give him his head on a long, flat road like this. You see he keeps looking over his shoulders. I think he feels confident to prevent Ludovic coming back to him. I'm not sure it's the ideal tactic, because the two of them together almost certainly could survive what's happening here. You've got one man chasing another.
Well, we need a little look back with our camera now to see what's happened to Ludwig. He was almost on him on the descent. I can't believe he's not with him. But he may well have lost ground here, because it looks as though Joost de Postuma is beginning to nose ahead. 15 seconds, it's nothing, is it?
15 seconds, that corresponds to around about 250 meters at speeds like this. But this guy, Phil, for a real first-year fully fledged professional bike rider, looks exceptionally strong. That's the main field. They actually don't seem to be reacting, and it still plays very much into the hands of Bobby Julich. All of the time bonuses gone out of the window. 19 seconds his advantage over Constantino Zabaya and 20 seconds over Alejandro Valverde. There's only 10 seconds for the win, so it's all going to have to really bank on tomorrow's stage.
Well, we understand there are 5 riders in between of the original breakaway. The others have been swept up. But we don't know exactly where they are because our cameras have just got 2 cameras, one with the leader, one with the main field from the helicopter. This is the leader now, and he's going to have to stop looking around and just bury himself because it's all or nothing right now for Postuma.
And let's not forget, it's a very hard run into the finish because you can see how blustery the winds are here this afternoon. And the final few kilometers are right along the Mediterranean with the wind buffeting in, and a long straight road along the coastline into Cannes. There is the referee there, and the neutral service car up alongside him.
And no sign of Ludwig in that distance shot there, so he could well be pulling away here. He might have cracked Jord Ludwig. 8 kilometers to go.
I tell you what, Ludwig will kick himself though, because he came. I actually thought he was on the wheel and in the slipstream of this rider, but it was probably about 10 meters, but it was 10 meters too much for Jörg Ludwig. If he could got into the slipstream, he might just have survived. But I think now, next time we get a time check, we'll be looking at around about 30 seconds to the German.
It looks we've got a bunch there, or here rather, of at least 50 riders, and still continuing the little in-fight. This has gone a great way for Bobby Julich today, and he needs to thank riders like Frank Schleck and Jens Voigt particularly for holding this race together.
Well, I think you're quite right there, Phil, because the gap was around about 2 kilometers, and at speeds like this, you see the main field are not really riding very fast, so the gap must be hovering around about the 2.5 minute mark.
Well, there we are, 2:55. Should we try that one? That is going out again, I think. 18 seconds to the poursuivant. That will be Jörg Ludwig somewhere. You know, that 2:55, I think, is to the 5 chasers, and the peloton are even further back.
Well, in that case, that is certainly going to be victory for the men up the road, because this is not a chase in earnest to pull everybody back. This is a question of just setting a tempo. Bit tricky riding into town these days, especially in France with all this traffic furniture out on the road. But everybody seems to be nice and safely around there, and Bobby Julich must be feeling just that little bit more comfortable. Just 10 kilometers to go on today's stage, and then a very difficult stage tomorrow, up and down the Corniche, just outside of Monaco, between Nice and Monaco. Just inside 7 kilometers for this man in what will have to be his greatest ever victory.
No question about that. His first big one as a full-time Rabobank #1 Pro Tour team member. The peloton here. These rather dodgy streets in town as we approach Cannes today. In fact, this is the only time of the year that organisers can bring big cycle races into this area of France, because the traffic on the Côte d'Azur, once we turn out of March, becomes just too difficult to organise bike races.
Strong team, CSC, at the start of the season. They've already got the victory in the Tour of the Mediterranean under their belt, and that went to Jens Voigt, who's sitting in second position there. I think he's really enjoying working for Bobby Julich. These two guys are exceptionally good friends throughout the season. Last year they finished in 3rd and 4th place in the overall classification. I wonder if they knew the name of Just Postuma before the start of today's stage, because, as you said, Phil, this is his first real year on a fully fledged Pro Tour team. And Jörg Ludwig, well,
he knows him now.
He does. He knows what his back wheel looks like as well. He got to within 10 meters of it at the bottom of the Col de Tanneron, and he must not be very happy at all. But you can see there's almost a difference in the speed of these two riders. This man is riding with power and determination, while Jörg Ludwig is riding with a man just hoping to survive and hold on to second place.
The big rider we caught a glimpse of there, looking at the peloton, was Tom Boonen, so he's in that group and looking to clean up in the sprints. He's leading in the points competition, and so he'll look for a fast finish today. I'm not sure what he's sprinting for until we just see how many riders there are in between the leader and the peloton, but we think, including Ludwig, there are probably 6.
Team manager coming up alongside, giving him information, and the information is very positive indeed, because it's about 45 seconds now to this man out on the road. And I was really amazed to see how close he got to the back wheel of Postuma. But let's not forget, he's the man who set up the attack, and he rode for around about 15 kilometers on his own before Postuma came across to him on the Col de Tanneron. Postuma must have been just that little bit fresher when it came to that downhill section.
Well, he has literally ridden Jörg Ludwig off his back wheel today, and we're getting onto the coast now. We're not far away from the finishing line. Tongue out, tuck in, and 4.7 kilometers to go.
It's got 4 kilometers of that is right along the coastline with the seaside on the right-hand side, and the wind buffeting him all the way until he gets to the final kilometer and gets into the outskirts of the city of Cannes. He still looks good, and he's still got a very comfortable advantage, and these guys here have got them chances to see what it's like to ride in the peloton of Paris-Nice.
Trouble is they're running out of road there. I hope they're ready to stop as the peloton race by, and they're out of it today, and this is great news for Bobby Julich. He's 1 day away from a historic victory now. This man 1 day away from his first ever victory as a top pro. He's actually won 5 races in the past. Nothing, of course, this year as a full-time worker on Rabobank, but in Rabobank 3 he has won some good bike races. Clearly another big find by the team. It's a wonderful sponsorship in Holland, Rabobank, which is obviously a bank. And they don't just look after their main team, which is the top Pro Tour team. They have a nursery squad, they have a women's team, and they bring the youngsters through from school level. It is a really well thought out programme.
Good plan. They actually support every different discipline in the sport of cycling, even mountain biking and the track racing. Trying to see who was in the team car there. Whoever it is was very excited. It may well have been Frans Maassen. Maassen was the man who at the start of the development of Rabobank used to look after the under-23 squad, but he's been brought in now to look after the fully fledged Pro Tour team since the promotion of Theo de Rooij.
Here is the beauty of the Côte d'Azur. Off to the right shoulder, it's also a windy area. But even at this time of the year in March, it's warm enough to just have a little bit of sunbathing down there on the beach. But that'll come later today for Postuma, because all he's doing now is dreaming of a victory here. It's a beautiful coastline. You continue right round. You'll go into Nice, as we will tomorrow. Keep going. You'll be into Monte Carlo, and before you know it, you could be even in Italy.
Not too far away. Just 12 months ago, it was a pink jersey in this situation on this stage of Paris-Nice, and that was Alexander Vinokourov, and this is the man who is chasing him. Last year it was Sammy Sanchez was trying to get the victory, and he was overtaken in the final few kilometers by Vinokourov. Now it's a different scenario. It's a Dutchman who's being chased by a German. There you can just see the little gaggle of houses starting to appear. That's the outskirts, and look at the speed. This man is whacking along here at 60 kilometers an hour, 40 miles an hour, after a very long breakaway. A lot of that, I think, has got to do, Phil, with his youthful enthusiasm.
Well, host Postuma celebrated his 24th birthday the day they reduced the race to just about 53 minutes of racing because of the snow. Frozen out of it, but today he's really heated the world up, and I don't think they're going to catch him now. Ludwig is not racing to catch him, he's racing to try and hold second.
2 kilometers to go. That's going to be around about 2.25 minutes at the speed this man is going. He's inside of the 2K banner, and he will just look over his shoulder occasionally to see what the distance is between himself, and I have a feeling it must still be hovering around about the 45-second mark. He did a great job, this man. He was obviously very confident. He looked back and saw that Jörg Ludwig had almost came onto his slipstream, but he kicked again and opened up the gap to 50 meters. That little look there is more to check than anything else, because his team manager will have given him the information. And look at the sea breaking here onto the beach. Can the host
could
of
be
the
a lot
festival.
worse. It could be breaking right over the seawall, so he's rather lucky today. The peloton is slipping away. 3:45 now, so he's actually riding away from that pack. There's the kilometre to go. The wind a bit too strong to put the whole bridge up, but the clothesline does, with the red triangle in the middle. Less than 1,000 metres now to ride to a great victory, and the host Postuma is keeping the Rabobank colours flying today. It's been a great show of strength. He's got a beautiful riding style. He hasn't moved an inch with his legs, just pumps through the shoulders, locks in on the handlebars there. It's not a style that will win him many mountaintop races, but it certainly will win him a race like this. and he's riding home. He wants a word of encouragement perhaps from his team car. They can't come up to him now. We're in the last 500 or 600 metres.
Just wants to share the moment, I think, with his team manager in the car behind. There's the car of the race referee. Nobody's going to challenge this man, though. This is going to be the greatest victory of his career as he comes into the last 300 or 400 metres. Time to enjoy it. Salutes the team manager.
The team car to come up alongside with him and enjoy the moment. Red flashing light says you can't, but it doesn't matter because Joost Postuma gets his first victory for his new top team, Rabobank. What a wonderful feeling. And I think it'll be a bit of a wait before we see the peloton. I can't even see Ludwig. Here he is now. He's even out of sight of the finishing line. He must be over a minute back now.
I tell you what is very impressive, though, Phil, was the average speed, because I know these roads down here very well, and this man has ridden today's stage at an average speed of just inside of 40 kilometres an hour.
This is an emotional time there for the Postuma, but it'll all be good tonight round the table.
Quite a bit of jubilance, I would think, with the Rabobank squad, and as well a bit of jubilance with Team CSC as well, because this is actually very much played into their hands, because these two men here are robbing all of the time bonuses out on the stage here this afternoon. Ludovic, I wonder what he'll be thinking about that descent now. He was so close to riding in for the win. Look at that time. It is going to be around about the 1 minute mark.
It is. He was there. He could reach out and touch him. He never shut it down, and the guy was gone again. There's the minute up. Time is irrelevant here because these boys are not going to shoot up the overall classification. Little shake of the head there from Ludwig. He's really upset with himself, but he had no answers, in fairness. Nearly 4 3/4 hours the ride today. And at the end of the day, a great result for him, but a non-result for the race, because they never challenged, because of the fine tactics of CSC, they never challenged Bobby Julich at all.
Great day tactically for Team CSC. They kept complete and utter control, and these guys have actually survived. This looks like Aaron Kemps here, and I'd forgotten all about him.
It is Aaron Kemps. He must have come up from on the climb there and joined Cyril Dessel on the descent, I would think, of the Tanneron, and he takes the sprint. Third place for young Aaron Kemps. It's the new blood of the years to come we're seeing here, that's for sure now. Dessel is in 4th place, timed at 1 minute 43, those two. The peloton now racing down the promenade, but there's still more. That breakaway somewhere up there.
A lot of riders just hoping to survive off the front end of the main field, but that is actually a very small main field. All of the main contenders in the top 10 in the overall classification there, and still very much controlled by Team CSC on the front. Rabobank over to the right-hand side, trying to look after Eric Decker, who is still pretty high up in the overall classification, but Bobby Julich's men, they're all over the front of this.
They just have to finish in this pack at the same time as everybody, and it'll be job done for the last day tomorrow, and it'll be showdown on the Col d'Ez. Tom Bonan will look to take this out because he's racing, I think, for 8th place, and there are points for 8th place, and that will consolidate his lead. Yes, he is racing for 8th, because here come the rest of the breakaway here, and Gerolsteiner's Thomas Ziegler is the rider on the front. That'll be Bram Schmitz of Quick-Step just behind him, and Bram Schmitz will be the T-Mobile. Here comes the sprint, and I don't think there's going to be much change here. No, Ziegler looks as though he's got it. The others are dancing all over the road, but not making much progress. Good sprint there by Thomas Ziegler. Gerolsteiner, he will get, I have to add this up, he'll get 5th place. 6th and 7th are in. So the race is for 8th from the peloton.
8th place for the peloton. All trying to keep an eye and try and stay at the front end of the main field. And Quick-Step here, there you can see in 3rd place in the green and white jersey as leader of the points classification is Tom Boonen. He needs to keep getting these points because, in fact, Jens Voigt is not too far behind him in that classification. Jens has always been consistent, not one of the great sprinters, but it's his consistency which has kept him up in that competition.
Important for Bonan, and I suspect for Voigt as well here, but for the rest, when they're not racing for the top prizes, they tend to back off a little bit. This should be a formality for Bonan. Having said that, look at this now. Over the top and a long way round. They're almost brought by the teammate of Bonan is Jens Voigt. He's had to get back into the fray. He's on the back wheel of Tom Bonan, but he really was pushed out of it there. Wasn't an illegal tactic, but it left him with no chance to take on Tom Bonan. So it'll be 8th for Tom, 9th for Jens, and Popovic, I think it was, for the Discovery up there somewhere too.
Very nice to see him riding better and better. That's the little Corniche just outside of Cannes. This is the host of the Cannes Film Festival later on in the season, and a A great place to come in the summer months if you want to come and see the rich people play.
Yes, but if you want a cheaper meal, go up the mountain where the riders just come from. There's the result for you. Joost Postuma getting his first big win ahead of Ludwig. The gaps were there. 3:11 was the time gap, and 4:02 in fact, out to the main field, led home by Tom Bonen. There he is, all smiles. Postuma, Rabobank getting a nice result here today after a breakaway that went almost from the start of the stage.
I don't believe that he could have thought that was going to happen. No change at all in the overall classification, really. Bobby Julich now, Phil, just 24 hours away from victory.
And what a great victory that would be, a revitalised Bobby Julich. There he is on stage, not too far away from where he actually lives here when he's in Europe for his professional career, and looking pretty happy with the way things are going now. Well, he might, because he knows the roads as good as any Frenchman tomorrow as we go up the mountains behind Nice. Start and finish in Nice, but it's over the Col d'Ez.
My team rode perfectly today. I think it's been 8 years since I've had a leader's jersey, and this was definitely the best day I could have hoped for. I mean, my team was super strong, and I was super strong. Jens was super strong, so there wasn't really much anyone could do. And, you know, we have one more day to go, and our objective is to win Paris-Nice.
Come on, Bobby. Jens was super strong, surely. Anyway, day 8 to stage 7, and we're on the way back to Nice today. The riders in and out of this beautiful city right down on the Côte d'Azur, the Millionaires' Playground, and the boys have gone back up into the mountains for one last time.
Little town of Ez there. This is the descent down Nice to Nice, 135 kilometres, but they didn't take the easy way around, that's for certain. This descent here is looking down over to the left-hand side. If you just get yourself a little glimpse, you can see the outskirts of Monaco. 25 seconds and 30 seconds back to the main group.
Well, the split has happened on the way up the climb. We do cover the mountain 3 times, but this is a beautiful area. It's very much Roman affected, of course, and it looks as though we may be joining the action here today on the final lap, as we're watching a move here by Contador.
Contador on the descent. He actually made the move on the final ascent of the Col d'Ez. A nice little move by him. Went over the top around about 30 seconds ahead of Alexander Vinokourov. And this man here is Vinokourov here. Vinokourov just 5 seconds off the front. He's looking to try and get himself the victory here on the descent. Not had quite a successful Paris-Nice as he did last year when he took out 3 stages, or in fact a couple of years ago when he won the race on 2 occasions. Those are the remnants of the group. Bobby Julich nice and comfortably in there, just counting away the kilometres now. His team all over the front, 2 CSC riders in front of him, trying to pull this all back together. Again, they need to be quite sensible here, Phil, because there are still time bonuses, and Alejandro Valverde didn't get any of the time bonuses out on the course, but if he gets himself a small gap on the run into the finish, he could still steal the victory away from Bobby Julich.
Well, it's a big, heavy effort here by Alexander Vinokourov. And he won't lie down, will he? Because when he doesn't win this race overall, he usually always wins a stage. But Contador here... Oh! What on earth happened there? He pulled his foot somehow off the pedal. I nearly jumped off my seat.
I don't know how he did. Let's have a look at that again. What happened?
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but I do know that this bike rider will never know how he managed to stay upright. That's the amazing thing about the ability of bike riders sometimes, to stay upright in a situation where normally 9 times out of 10 you would have gone down.
I can only think he's trying so hard. He's pulling up on the pedal as well as pushing down, and he's turned his ankle, released it from the cleat. How he missed that lamppost, I don't know.
Well, if his maximum heart rate is 180, I'll bet it's at
mine's
230
now, I'll tell you.
But that might give the advantage here to Alexander Vinokourov, because when you have an accident like that, you just go to jelly for a fraction before you get back into a nice move. And he's lost a few seconds, 17 seconds over Alexander Vinokourov, but the main field, Phil, just 5 seconds further back. Vinokourov using the motorbike just a fraction there to try and pull himself a bit further forward. There's Kim Kirken sitting on the back.
Completing a very good Paris-Nice. This is hardly the main field, really. It's the remnants, it's the cream, I suppose. And they're all watching each other here, all of the men of the overall. And Bobby Julich is in there and very happy now. Again, his team has marked everything. Julich has had the legs to go with the moves as well over the Col d'Ez as we now run across the escarpment here. Alberto Contador, who is having a wonderful start to the year after he suffered great illness. He's back, and this is a fabulous season already for him.
Just looking down there at Alexander Vinokourov for around about a quarter of a minute. Look at him right on the front end of the saddle. He's giving it absolutely everything here. He can just about, in the straighter parts of this course, see Alberto Contador, but when you see a rider sitting right on the beak of the saddle like that, it's an indication that he's giving it absolutely everything. A little bit precarious now, though, Contador. I think a little bit shaken by that incident just a few moments ago, and I tell you what, I really jumped on the edge of my seat. I don't know how he kept upright, but I've seen a lot of bike riders do that throughout my career, just get on the edge of the accident and manage to save it somehow.
Well, these roads are very hazardous in this region. We've said it before, we must say it again. You've got to stay on your mettle, you've got to stay alert, and that's a very select group now of all the men who have made this such a very good Paris-Nice this year, all heading towards Nice together. And there's Bobby Julich, second wheel, following his teammates here, keeping an eye on things, and he's looking and feeling pretty good right now because he's not far away from being crowned the champion of Paris-Nice, a race of almost 1,300 kilometres.
It's Frank Schleck on the front. Finished in the top 10 in Paris-Nice last year, and he's going to finish in the top 10 of Paris-Nice this year as well. This actually looks like Eric Decker coming back here now. This is a bit of a surprise for me because Eric Decker was in serious difficulty a few moments ago on the final ascent of the Col d'Ez. But he's actually, there's the contact, that is the contact. Contador now has been caught by Alexander Vinokourov. Now Alexander Vinokourov has got a very good chance of taking out the win here.
Well, this is a typical move by Alexander Vinokourov, and it's one he will try every day if he gets half a chance. Remember, it's the one that won in the stage when he slipped Lance Armstrong on the road into Gap, and it was on the way to Gap where the crash occurred to Yoshiba Bolocki. And on that occasion, I think it was 15 seconds, the winning margin for Alexander Vinokourov. Very typical move by a strong man who never gives up. And again, he's not going to affect the destiny of the final win, so why should they chase him down?
Not a problem at all. Look at Bobby Julich. He must be counting away the kilometres, just waiting. It was interesting for him to tell us yesterday that, in fact, it was 8 years since he's led a bike race like this. It's a long time to wait to try and get yourself an overall victory once again, and Bobby Julich in the last couple of years really has come back to being what was a great bike rider. You see that little signal there from Alexander Vinokourov? He wants Contador to keep working with him, but I'm not sure that Contador's got very much left in the engine room because he broke clear around about 5 kilometres from the summit of the Col d'Ez, and he must be certainly pretty much close to being on the rivet.
Well, after that, a little adrenaline rush further back up the mountain when he lost his foot. I would think the adrenaline's gone now and he's shaking like a jelly. But anyway, it looks, he shakes his head, he says, I can't.
Well, if Vinokourov wants to win this, Phil, he's going to have to do it all on his own. I don't think he needs to worry too much about Contador because he's not one of the great sprinters of the peloton, and of course he's used an awful lot of energy to stay off the front end of the main field. Kerken over to the right, and just in the blue and white jersey there, that is Alejandro Valverde. He's leading the best young rider competition.
He's been around so long and he still qualifies for that competition. It is amazing. Yeah.
Unbelievable. He's
been leading it virtually the whole tour too.
That's the port of Nice where we're heading to. We've got to go all the way around the port there before we finish on the Promenade des Anglais. It's a very strange finish here because you go on the opposite side of a dual carriageway and kick back on yourself with a right-hand bend. Vinokourov, he's trying to force Contador to come to the front, and by doing this he's actually losing a little bit of impetus. They had about 15 seconds advantage, and it's still 16 seconds advantage, but every time that Vinokourov slows down to try and encourage the other guys to come forward, he's losing time and losing his advantage.
And here's Discovery Channel getting a grip of things now at the head of the race, but they may have left it too late. We're on the way down, 3 kilometres to go.
And that was Tricky Beltran. He looks pretty good on the front of the group. He was under a bit of difficulty on the slopes of the Col d'Ez. Contador here, they've still got a fraction of descent. They won't lose much time here, but it's on the flat final 2 kilometres where they could lose some time, because it looks to me as if that group is certainly now starting to whip up the pacemaking.
Well, Alexander Vinokourov, he's won this race twice. One was in great sadness when his friend died
Andrei
on the race.
Kivilev.
Andrei Kivilev, yes, who died on this race, and then he came and won it again. But he's also won stages, and now I wonder if he can hold them off. 15 seconds. They've chiselled 1 second off. Time is running out. It's going to be a desperate finish, this. They run straight off this mountain onto the promenade, and it looks as though Contador isn't kidding. I think he really is tired.
I tell you what, Alejandro Valverde is riding very close to the front here. Now, there's still a time bonus left for third place. Now, if he was to get the time bonus, he would leapfrog over Constantino Zabaya, just 1 second separating the second and third place in the overall classification. But there's only 10 seconds for the win. So even if he does come back, there's hardly any chance at all of him stealing the victory away from Bobby Julich in the last kilometre.
Here we are now, down by the pier here. And Alexander Vinokurov, he can't waste time checking on whether Contador is tired or sitting on him or about to jump him in the sprint, but he keeps on doing it. They're looking over the shoulder together. I think that group is almost up. 10 seconds, so they must be right on them. If we swing around, this is going to be desperate. I'm not sure they're going to make this.
You cannot mess about at a moment like this, especially coming into the final 1.5 kilometres.
And look at this drive by Discovery Channel here to help Beltran perhaps back into the action with Popovic there as well as Tommy Danielson. This is a select group running down now towards the finish. And Bobby Julich, how ironic, an American making an American team do the work for him.
On the Promenade des Anglais.
Ah, oui, les Anglais.
But I think they may well be thinking about Popovic in that group there. There's the final kilometre. Those guys still holding on to around about 8 seconds. They swing around here, they line up to the Promenade des Anglais, and then they've got that very long straight down into the finishing line.
Through the little switchback. It's a lovely area. All the posh hotels on the right there. They cost quite a lot of euros for a room, 200 or 300 if you're lucky.
400 or 500.
If you're unlucky. The famous palm trees that grow well down here in this part of the world.
Certainly do. Vinokurov is very worried here. He keeps zigzagging over, looking back over his shoulder to see the position of that group behind. And I tell you what, this is a nice move here. This looks like Decker. Eric Decker, he may well have just created the surprise. He only got on about 2 kilometres ago.
Well, every which way, Eric Decker has won stages of the Tour de France. Now, how's he going to do this? He's trying to drive the race close. There's the crowd on the Promenade des Anglais. It's very often finished in the opposite direction in the case when Paul Sherwin once rode it. But now it's this way, C on the left, and Vinokurov has made all of the racing to reach Contador. And the way Contador is moving, he doesn't look like a man who's going to give up without a fight right now.
He certainly won't. The motorbike's been pulled off. Vinokurov, they've been picked up in the last few moments, and they're back in the group.
They were right behind the motorbike as they turned him off, and they've jumped him, and it looks as though they're going to get washed away in the sprint. And that is Valverde who's going. He's got the bonus. He climbs a place overall. It won't affect the overall result, though, and that will go to American Bobby Julich. But what a result for Alessandro Valverde.
Valverde, great bike rider. Kim Kirken just cruising across the line there. He will finish in the top 4 or 5 on the stage as well. But the glory on the final day goes to Alejandro Valverde. Just look at this. This is a man to watch out for in the future. And Alexander Vinokurov, Phil, I have to say, he is the man responsible for losing that race. He should have forgotten all about Contador and gone for it over the last 400 or 500 metres. And Valverde never would have caught him.
As it was, I reckon he made the top 6 of Vinokurov, but that was because they caught them right on the line. There's the catch now from the air. Our motorbike was turned off into the deviation just before the finish. As they sweep by, they gave Valverde a catapult finish. Pelazzotti it is going through there, Kim Kirken there. And, you know, I think Vinokurov held on for a 5th place finish, but he won't be interested in that.
No, it's win or lose, and that's exactly what he did there. He lost, I think, by not having the confidence. But this is a very historic moment for American cycling because Bobby Julich has become the first American ever to win Paris-Nice.
And I think as a pro, and he turned pro back in 1992, this could be his first ever outright stage race win, because although he got the Paris-Nice back in 98...
Criterium International.
Criterium International in 98, he didn't actually win that event. It was on a later disqualification of the Frenchman Moreau. Here comes the rest of the field here. The clock continues to click.
Floyd Landis at the back of that group. Thomas Vogler coming in there as well. And actually just having a quick look, Phil, at the main field, I haven't yet seen Tom Bonen anywhere. Now that could be rather interesting for a man by the name of Jens Voigt, because it could be that he'll steal the points classification on the last day.
Well, that would be absolutely amazing. Valverde gets the win, though. Pelazzotti, Kirk and Popovic it was who took fourth, and fifth place did go to Vinokurov, with Jens Voigt taking sixth, so he certainly scored points there. There is the winner of the day, Alejandro Valverde. I wonder if this is a man who might take on Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France. He's developing every time we see him ride, and he can sprint, he can climb, and he can time trial just a bit too. But there is history in the making. The first American ever to win Paris-Nice is Bobby Julich, with a 10-second margin in the end over Valverde, who came up into second place overall. Zabaya goes back into third, 19 seconds off the pace. Well, a wonderful smile there from Bobby Julich, because this is very much a home win for the American. Living here in Nice, he knows the roads, he knows the people. He will feel indeed very much at home.
Must have felt very comfortable on those roads today. He probably knew every inch of the way.
I'm very, very proud of both myself and my team. And I have to thank Bjarne Riis, and most importantly my wife, because she's been there with me through thick and thin, and we're going to have a nice bottle of wine together. Maybe not tonight because I have so many obligations, but tomorrow for sure.
I guess it's also a promising victory for the weeks, for the months to come.
Yeah, it's nice to really, I don't win very much. I'm not a rider who wins once a week or once a month. So for me, this is very, very special.
Yes, indeed. And also a little bonus here, top team as well for CSC and Jens Voigt. Yes, he did triumph in the points competition on the very last day. You could call that a clean sweep, Paul.
You certainly could call it a clean sweep, because Jens Voigt just up alongside Bobby Julich in the green and white jersey. And that was a competition that he clinched on the final day in the final sprint.
And richly deserved, I have to say that, for Bobby Julich. Well, as we look out across the Bay of Angels, Bobby Julich is back. He's been reincarnated by Bjarne Riis, and I'm hoping that this year he is once again going to be a major challenger in the Tour de France, a race he once finished third in back in 1998. David Moncoutier there, he was the winner of the King of the Mountains, and he didn't have to ride too hard for that. He did it all really on one day of competition. There's the beautiful trophies, and one of them will now stand on the sideboard of the American Bobby Julich. As we look into the distance towards Italy, I think, and Sicily, we'll say goodbye. Phil Liggett with Paul Sherwin.